fan base already. People that used to follow him around the circuit when he arrived at Imola, and then that just grew and grew. And when he won the championship at Zandvoort when I say Freca,
this is effectively below Formula 3.
Yeah, so Formula Regional European Championship by Alpine is what some people might know in years gone by as the Formula Renault Euro Cup, which is below FIA.
And he's coming into that with a huge fan base.
Yes, yeah, and it was just people knew him so well. He had a big following online. He had the Mercedes team, the Mercedes junior team with him. When he won at Zandvoort, we had a massive crowd of people outside the Prema Racing awning. And if you're a Prema driver already, you carry some support, and it was just people waiting for him. Sam, we'll come to you quickly.
Yeah, some quite significant work going on there down at Mercedes. You can see the brake discs coming off the car there, and they've replaced a driver with a crash helmet.
There you go.
A camera inside it. They're clearly doing quite a big brake change, which is quite early in the test. It's a bit surprising to see a big brake change going on, but I suspect what they've done is they've seen what the weather conditions are, decided to take advantage of the fact that the track isn't in great condition right now, and they're going to do a change that they probably plan to do a little bit later in the day. And you can see those carbon brake discs being carried away in that train. The new one's gone on at the front, and that's a big job. And that sort of cake tin looking thing at the front that looks like you might get a cake in, well, the mechanics call it exactly that, a cake tin.
Well, we'll pick up some more rookies chats in a while, but we can see pictures of Williams currently on screen, and Lawrence Barretto a little bit earlier caught up with Dave Robson from Williams.
So Dave, I just wanted to get your general reflections on testing for Williams so far. It looked like a really encouraging day for both drivers yesterday in the team.
Yeah, obviously still really early days, but yeah, yesterday went as well as we could expect. I think car ran without any problems. When we were in the garage, it was because we were doing things that we'd planned to do. Both drivers were pretty happy, so yeah, a really good start.
How challenging is it to get a read in testing, both positively and negatively about the car?
It is tough. I think what we try to do these days is design the experiments to just exercise the car in different ways, not necessarily trying to make it faster right here, right now, particularly in these conditions in Bahrain. They're not really representative of when we'll be back here. So we're really just trying to exercise the car, collect a set of data that we can compare to the simulations, and once we're happy that we correlate the simulations well, then we can use those to evolve the car for the races ahead.
So does most of the crunching, I guess, the data crunching happen after the test when you've got that block of data to go through, or are there little things you can do as you're going along?
Yeah, a bit of both. So we can do things straight away in some cases and react immediately. Other things we do overnight. So we were here quite late last night, the team back in the factory also working on the data. So that's informed some of the things we'll do today. And then there's a lot of it which we'll cover next week. And that might alter the way we do some final development work on the 47, might affect how we set the car up going into Melbourne, and some of it is just collecting data on some like R&D items that will affect the 48, FW48, so the 2026 car.
Yeah. Cool. Carlos is in the car all day today, a little bit different to maybe probably most of the teams up and down the field. What is the difference there when you've got a driver for the full day relative to splitting it down the middle?
Yeah, so it's something we discuss coming into testing every year, but I mean, for us, we prefer them to do a whole day. Mm-hmm. That allows them to, run new tyres in the morning, say, and then rerun those in the afternoon. It's always a little bit trickier when you inherit someone else's used tyres if you want to do it like that. So that's a bit more difficult. It's nice not to have to do the driver change at lunchtime when there's lots of other work to go in the car. So just from an efficiency point of view, obviously like everyone else, we have to take that hour's downtime, but we don't really want that to become 90 minutes or 2 hours work, which it was yesterday. So just in the interest of being on track as much as possible, we prefer to do one driver for the whole day.
In terms of the programme then for the next couple of days today and with Alex in the car tomorrow, what have you got planned?
Well, a little bit subject to the weather, so it's still spitting with rain a little bit here as we talk, but more general testing and just exercising the car, a bit more correlation work, and then we'll start to try and push it a little bit harder and try and set it up a little bit better for the conditions we have here. really just to get the driver's experience of what it feels like when it is set up reasonably well. And then from that, we just get a sense of what we might want to do to the car ahead of the first batch of races.
Because we're in the 4th year of this generation of car, are you able to go searching for that performance slightly earlier over the course of the 3 days of testing than you would do, say, at the first year?
Yeah, I think generally yes. There's a few things we've changed on the car in terms of how we want it to work aerodynamically that led us to do some particular testing yesterday. As you know, with these ground effect cars, it's easy to push them too hard and find that they bite you. So there was a little bit of that going on, but we didn't find anything particularly concerning. But yeah, the nice thing is mechanically all the systems are pretty reliable, so you can at least just get straight on with running on the first day and start to look at the aero and the general performance side of things.
Lovely stuff, Dave. Well, thank you very much for your time. Good luck for the rest of the test.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you to Lawrence Barretto, speaking there to Chief Engineer at Williams, Dave Robson. And Williams having a very, very strong morning so far. Carlos Sainz in 2nd place. Things looking good for Williams going into this season. A really, really strong driver lineup for them. It's got to be one of the strongest driver pairings they've had for a little while now. I think they're feeling very, very confident, aren't they, going into this season? A great feeling around the team, not just for this season, but they're working long term there with the pairing they have.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember James Wells last year saying when they signed Sainz, they thought they had the best driver pairing on the grid, which felt like a stretch.
Yeah.
At the time. It still does, but it's a really good driver pairing for Williams. Yeah. You mentioned the best for a while. What are we saying? The best Williams driver pairing since...
I went back to 2019 when George Russell came in was a good one, but
Russell Latifi.
Yeah, was it 2016 was Massa and Bottas?
Yeah,
was good. 28 was 2019, 2016. 2016 was Massa Bottas, wasn't it? That was it. That was a good.
I don't know if I could put Russell and Kubica, was it,
yeah,
in 2019?
Russell
but it was Kubica not in peak.
Russell was a rookie as well.
Not in peak part of his career. Rookie Russell, yeah. I think you've got to go back probably
2016,
nearly 10 years to Bottas, Massa, and that's a sign of the times, isn't it, for Williams getting? And even then, Sainz and Albon are two really solid drivers. Race winner with Sainz, podium finisher with Albon. It's encouraging for Williams, definitely. Even if you go back beyond there, then there's a load of other years of sort of Williams not having an absolute killer driver lineup. They've had Barrichello and Hulkenberg. Webber and Rosberg was a very good lineup they had, but I think this is right up there for Williams, and it's certainly a sign of the times that I think the depth in the field is really good, and it shows when Williams have got the lineup they've got now.
Really great stuff. They've got exciting times ahead to Williams, especially if they can work with this driver lineup going forwards. Sam.
Yeah, well, during this test, sometimes, as you know, as you've seen now, Chris, sitting with me, I completely lose attention to what you're talking about and what you're doing, and dive into my laptop and I'm staring at pictures and going through other shots on another screen here. And one of the things I've noticed about is on the Mercedes, but I've got Alex Brundle to go down the pit lane to have a look into the Mercedes garage, and I'm quite keen to see what he can see. There we go. Now, Alex is looking at something underneath the car, but I want to tell you a little bit of a story. First of all, I want you to note the hump underneath that mechanic's hands where you can see George Russell's driver number. There's a little black section, black painted section, just in front of that driver number. That's a fake driver cooling duct. It's not real, it's just painted on. Now, Mercedes installed this hump on their nose partway through last season and said, oh, it's just for driver cooling, there's nothing underneath it, there's nothing complicated about it. And when they actually fitted their driver cooling duct at a lot of races, it sat on top of that hump, and it wasn't where that little duct is. And there's a lot of speculation up and down that Mercedes are doing something clever. If you can notice, that's where their front suspension picks up. And some people think there's something to do with the front suspension hiding under that hump in the nose. And I've got Alex Brundle to take a look at that. And Alex, is it fooling your eye? And I know you spotted something else on that car as well.
my eye is somewhat easier to fool than yours is, Sam. So I think it might be. Yeah, it is curiously close, isn't it, to where that front push rod enters the front of the chassis there. You see there's a really similarly positioned driver cooling duct on the Aston Martin, actually, which is just a couple of garages down. They've got a system that comes from the roof of the garage into a pneumatic fan that actually forces air through that driver cooling duct. I saw it yesterday while Fernando Alonso was sitting,
hari ini cuman 18.
in the pits waiting for his run. Interesting little piece of tech if
tahu
it
ya.
is, to condition the airflow or manage the air for a little further down
Dua
the car.
sisanya
I've also seen
mungkin
some
ya.
discussion and heard some discussion about another hidden
Bisa
duct.
jadi
I'm very
sih.
much on duct watch, actually, as I'm standing down here in the pit lane. Remember all through last
Belum
year,
ada
and even the
berita
year before,
kenapa-kenapanya juga
specifically
sih.
the extremely hot event we had in Qatar, where George Russell was struggling massively a couple of years back. Mercedes drivers continuously complaining that their seat is getting hot throughout the free practice. It was kind of a staple radio message at some events. Russell and Hamilton in that era of Mercedes complaining that their seat was getting hot through the event. I don't know if you've seen anything, Sam.
Belum.
Duct in the floor. I've been looking around, and again, my race driver eyes are nowhere near as good as your engineer eyes on this. That some are surmising is actually going to cool those electronics, and if you haven't, just say no.
Ya lagi hujan.
But there's some discussion about whether there is a duct low down
Lagi hujan.
towards the edge of the floor that's actually going in to cool those electronics. I don't know if you've seen anything around that.
Well, Alex, as you were talking to us, we could see down the camera that stood right next to you, and until the mechanic sort of stood in the way, we were looking at exactly the duct you were talking about. So, yeah, it does look like Mercedes, but to my eye, certainly.
I'm really glad you could see that so
Belum ada yang keluar sama sekali nih.
You were describing it absolutely perfectly. Now, I'm not sure if that's just
Masih
the edge
hujan.
of the floor wings or an actual duct. It's sometimes quite hard to see, but I think it is an
Tapi
actual
time-nya
duct.
sih udah mulai kecil semua ya. 1.30, 1.31. Menarik nih.
So that cooling hose put in as the car comes into the garage, that's feeding the normal duct in the center of the floor where there's a lot of
Iya sih, harusnya di hari
hari
kedua ini sebenarnya udah masuk ke 129 sih harusnya ya. Mungkin nanti di sesi kedua baru 129.
Yeah, I think there probably is something there, and I think you've touched on something quite good there, Alex. Now, I talk about fake ducts. So one of the reasons I brought that in is in
Pastilah,
testing,
Red
10
Bull
years ago, I think
apalagi
Red Bull
Lawson kan.
Mercedes
Lawson kan
turned up a
butuh
test, I think it was at Silverstone, and they'd relocated
butuh ini
the
doang.
exhausts to right down on the floor. This was
Apa
the beginning
namanya,
of the blown
butuh
diffuser era.
data
But to
untuk
try and
long
trick
run,
the eyes
lebih
of
ke
everybody
degradasi
who was in the
ban
car,
sih
they
dia
pitted
taunya.
fake
Pengen
exhausts in the
sama
normal
karakter
visual
mobilnya
field.
sih kalau Lawson
And
ya.
it
Kalau
worked for about an hour
Max
before they
Verstappen
realized
mungkin
they had
sama
the
ya.
exhausts. I wonder if Mercedes
Halo
is
Made.
just playing into that ever so
Ini bukan
slightly
game
with that
BTW.
fake duct
Ini
on the
kita
nose.
lagi
Curious thing to
Watchalong
see.
aja,
But Alex, I mean,
live data
with the weather down there, it doesn't look like Mercedes
untuk
are
precision
particularly keen to go
testing
driving
di
in front, does it?
F1.
Well, we're going to have a lot of time to talk about ducts, aren't we?
F1
Whatever
beneran
they're doing
gitu.
is working. George Russell second yesterday, Kimi Antonelli fastest in the morning, best of the rookies. So the Merc looking relatively strong.
San Mori-nya Max Verstappen aja udah 130, berapa itu kemarin? 6 ya? 130,6. Berarti ya kenceng. Cuman ya balik lagi ya, kalau kemarin kita lihatnya di bagian apa slow corner Red Bull itu kayak kesusahan gitu lah. Williams itu dibilang bagus juga enggak juga, dia beberapa kali ada mobilnya ngerasa understeer. Kemarin tuh ada beberapa corner dia understeer. Apalagi Ferrari kan, Ferrari masih belum nemu feel-nya kemarin. Nah sekarang sepertinya udah mulai nemu nih. Wah kurang tahu deh, Max Verstappen hari ini ikutan apa enggak masih belum tahu nih. Harusnya kalau misalnya hari ini biasanya max itu bagian sesi kedua. Sesi kedua itu jam 7 malam. Gitu. Iya, biasanya extend jam lagi, bener-bener. Kayak kemarin ya, kemarin itu ada power outage ataupun mati lampu, mati listrik. Itu nambah sejam, yang tadinya sampai jam 11 malam doang, tiba-tiba jadi jam 12 malam. Gila. Iya. Kemarin gelap. Iya, lupa isi token anjir, padahal ada promo 50% kan dari pemerintah. Dan ini hujannya lumayan loh, tumbenan loh, Bahrain hujan. Mantap juga ya. Red Bull hajar belum? Enggak, hajar di sesi kedua juga kayaknya. Nah, sepertinya tuh gini. Sepertinya Max itu nggak ikutan di sesi kedua ataupun pertama. Hari ini tuh nggak ikutan kayaknya. Hari kedua ini kayaknya Max nggak ikutan. Nggak tahu ya, itu keputusan dari tim ataupun keputusan dari Max-nya sendiri gitu. Nah, ini BTW Esteban Ocon coba untuk keluar dengan ban intermediate. Menarik nih, karena memang butuh tes untuk hujan juga sih. Iya, dia sama Albon nggak ikutan ya hari kedua nih. Ishak Hajar nanti sesi kedua. Nah nih, Ocon udah keluar. Muncul nggak? Ah ya, muncul. Good. Mati kurma. Menarik. Ocon keluar untuk mencari data ban hujan. Ini benar sih, ini bagus sih. Karena memang kalau kalian lihat ya, kemarin itu kan kok Haas di bawah, kok pelan banget, beda 3 detik sampai 5 detik. Sebenarnya mereka tuh di hari pertama sebentar. Live masih jalan kan guys? Live gue masih jalan kan? Live gue masih jalan kan? Halo? Oh masih ya? Iya, Discord gue tiba-tiba off. Sorry. Tadi sampai mana gue ngomong? Oh, si Haas, tim Haas itu lagi ini guys. Jadi kemarin itu tuh pakai full tank. Ini bensinnya full tank. Terus juga mereka tuh benar-benar long run. Dilihat dari lapnya, Ocon itu 72 lap, sedangkan si Oliver Bearman itu ada sekitar 87 laps gitu. Jadi ada di Discord gue sih, tapi Discord gue lagi error nih sebentar. Gue juga bingung kenapa ya. Hai kak, sorry, I'm new. You are F1 driver? Ini sama kayak RS biasa atau testing? Testing doang. Salah. Enggak, karir mode enggak, tapi jam 8 malam gue ada 6 player karir. Dan itu di YouTube gue. Lu bisa cek aja nanti. Nggak apa-apa. Ya hari ini sampai besok itu tuh cuman testing aja. Gitu. Ya. Kalau Hamilton kalau jadi sebenarnya guys, yang perlu kalian lihat itu sebenarnya bukan lap time-nya sih. Kalau di testing ya, pada waktu precision testing gini, terakhir besok. Nah, yang harus kalian lihat itu adalah berapa lap yang sudah dibikin sama driver per sesi itu, gitu sih. Karena kalau misalnya dari lap timing doang itu nggak ngaruh. Enggak dong. Race week-nya 2 minggu lagi, tanggal 14, 15, 16 Maret. 2 minggu lagi lah kira-kira. Ini hal yang aneh sih kalau ngelihat Bahrain basah terus pakai intermediate. Aneh banget, belum pernah. Hujan. Tuh, laps completed-nya Ocon itu 27, Hamilton cuma 17, Sainz cuma 14, Russell 28 paling banyak nih di sesi ke pertama ini di hari kedua. Gasly 14, Lawson 15, Hülkenberg 21, Alonso cuma 14, Tsunoda 11, Piastri cuma 7. Jadi memang McLaren itu yang paling dikit. Kemarin itu si Norris itu cuma 52 laps. Piastri itu cuma 50 berapa ya? 57, 55 deh. Gitu. Iya kan, aneh banget kan, Bahrain hujan cuy. Aneh banget. Gue juga bingung kenapanya. Aneh banget coy. Tapi ya kayak gitu. Maksudnya lebih ke arah precision testing ini lebih banyak untuk bikin lap sih. Dan Haas juga nggak lagi ngejar full speed ya. Kalau dilihat best time-nya dari Ocon di sesi hari ini itu 1 menit 33,7, ya kan? 1 menit 33,7, which is Ocon juga lagi coba long run gitu. Ya, dan tim Haas memang lagi coba long run sih. Sebenarnya make sense kalau misalnya tim Haas ini lagi coba long run, karena memang Haas ini kan baru kerjasama dengan Toyota, dan secara aerodinamis dan segala macamnya itu kan dibuat bareng sama Toyota. Nah, ini mereka lagi testing semuanya sih. Kemarin pakai ASRock, pakai Flowfish juga, dan banyak hal gitu kan. Jadi ya gitu deh. Dari jam berapa? Dari jam 2 siang tadi. Iya, Haas sama Toyota masih penyesuaian, betul. Mereka masih ngetes semua sih. Dan Haas itu dari dulu itu selalu kalau precision testing, mereka tuh lap yang paling banyak mereka cetak. Paling banyak. Selalu suka seperti itu. Masih lama, masih sampai jam 6 harusnya. Sesi pertama sampai jam 6. Sesi kedua ada dari jam 7 sampai jam 11. Per sesi 4 jam. Race-nya kapan bang? Lama, masih 2 minggu lagi. Bang mau tanya, kenapa mobil F1 lampu belakangnya menyala padahal cuaca nggak hujan? Nyala itu sebenarnya kayak kedip-kedip ya, merah-merah. Nah itu tuh menandakan IRS-nya. Tapi kalau posisi hujan sekarang kayak gini, itu tuh wajib nyala. Itu bukan sebagai, itu kayak semacam hazard, tapi lebih ke arah untuk ngasih tahu depan lu ada mobil nih. Nah misalnya gue nyetir, terus belakang gue ada mobil nih. Nah udah pasti mobil gue tuh udah pasti nyala. Semua mobil itu pasti nyala karena supaya memberitahu depannya, belakangnya belakang kita itu, kalau depannya itu ada kita gitu sih. Lebih ke arah situ. Nah, kalau misalnya nggak hujan, kenapa kok masih nyala-nyala kadang kayak kedip-kedip kayak lampunya Ultraman gitu kan? Itu lebih ke arah penanda IRS. Lu ngerubah IRS, terus IRS lo habis, terus lu lagi ngecharge, itu tuh lampu belakangnya dari F1 itu nyala, mobil F1 tuh nyala dia. Gitu, lebih ke arah IRS aja. Om, kalau long apa? Dicari apa aja ketahanan ban? Ya, degradasi ban, terus karakter mobilnya, terus familiarity untuk para driver untuk nyetir mobilnya dan segala macamnya sih. Banyak. Suspensinya nanti gimana gitu. Apa kira-kira alasan RB dan Williams cuma nurunin satu driver di D2 dan D3? Nggak tahu, jujur aja. Mungkin mau di fullin ya. Jadi kayak misalnya gini, Sainz di hari kedua ini dia turun 2 sesi. Why not? Bisa aja. Kayak gitu sih. Sandbagging itu apaan? Sandbagging itu lebih ke arah kayak misal nih, kan performa mobil lu 100%, tapi lu cuma nunjukin di dalam track itu cuma 80%, 70%. Jadi lu nggak nunjukin semuanya dan terlihat pelan mungkin oleh orang lain secara data. Tapi kan itu bukan 100% mobil lo, ke apa performa mobil lo. Nah, itu disebutnya sandbagging. Gitu. Sama-sama Force ID. Pakai V6, kena V6 hybrid. Kenapa? Ya, mengejar emisi yang lebih tipis dan lebih ramah lingkungan. Gitu. Max nggak ikut hari ini. Max sama Albon nggak ikut hari ini. Kalau ditanya kenapa nggak tahu. Mungkin keputusan dari driver dan juga timnya. Hamilton sama Sainz beda tipis. Ya kalau misalnya live apa untuk best time di sini sih bisa dikejar oleh semua ya. Even kayak Sauber pun bisa aja gitu. Tapi precision testing bukan sekedar ini guys, bukan sekedar best time, itu aja sih. Jagoan gue sih Max untuk sekarang. Gue lebih ke Max. Gue dari tahun kemarin ke Max sih. Dari tahun kemarin udah Max. Max bagus banget soalnya. Tapi katanya FIA lagi uji ulang untuk V10, bener kah? Alah, menurut gue itu cuman gimmick sih. Cuman gimmick gara-gara apa namanya? Gara-gara ini loh, peraturan FIA kan lagi gaduh banget kan. Itu cuman pengalian isu aja sih supaya FIA terlihat oh dia mendengarkan apa kata penggemar dan segala macam. Bohong banget lah. Gue sih gak demen. Ngapain balikin V10 lagi anjir? Udah V6 sudah bener kok, hybrid, mesin hybrid terus turbo gini udah bagus kok menurut gue. Iyalah, nge-live F1 langsung di-ban lah pasti. Kan copyright bro. Iyalah, menurut gue itu pengalian isu lah. V10 ngapain V10 kita? V10 tuh udah pernah lu pakai ya kan di tahun 2000-an lah, 2000 awal lah. Terus lu mau pakai lagi buat apa? Mau ngapain? Nggak ada gunanya. Udahlah, V6 sekarang dengan teknologi sekarang kan bagus. Kan pabrikan mobil juga ikut F1 itu kan jadi belajar kan tentang permesinan jadinya. Terus akhirnya mesin-mesin sekarang itu di mobil-mobil sekarang itu kan dari teknologi F1 juga gitu. Nah, hybrid bebannya berat. 2026 baterainya diperbesar Pak, jadi 50%, 50-50. Hybrid itu sudah pasti akan menjadi mesin masa depan. Iya, katanya Evan lagi mengurangi polusi suara. Gue nggak tahu kalau yang polusi suara. Kalau polusi udara ya, makanya kan targetnya 2030 itu emisinya 0, zero net emission kan, kejaran mereka, target mereka. Gitu. Ini kenapa lagi hujan? Max mana? Nggak tahu, hari ini dia nggak ikutan. Mungkin di hari ketiga dia ikutan. Prediksi WCC siapa bang? Gue sih antara dua, antara McLaren atau Ferrari lagi tetap. Ferrari belum nemu feel-nya nih. McLaren masih sembunyi-sembunyi nih di precision ini. Nggak ada doh, videonya nggak ada. Kena copyright gue ntar. Sorry. Tertarik dari F1 dari gue ngikutin F1. Kalau suka F1-nya itu tuh dari tahun 98, zamannya Mika Hakkinen. Tapi kalau bener-bener ngikutinnya itu baru di tahun 2016 lah kalau nggak salah, apa 2017 gitu. Tapi gue nonton dari 98 tuh nonton, cuman nggak, ya masih kecil ya, nggak yang gimana-gimana gitu sih. Sama, gue pertama kali nonton F1 itu baru umur 3 tahun, tahun 98. Oh, live streaming sim racing Max ya. Iya kayaknya ya, bisa jadi. Next year is our year. Kenapa next year? Kalau bisa this year. Kata gue mah lebih ke arah kayak Ferrari harus bisa memanfaatkan 2 tahun ini bersama Lewis Hamilton, harus bisa di-push bener-bener. Rugi loh. Lu udah bayar Lewis mahal banget, tapi lu nggak bisa juara, rugi sih. Dulu tuh ada di TVRI. Tahun 98 tuh ada di TVRI. Tapi dulu nggak nonton full ya, maksudnya ngikutin dari kayak baca koran gitu kan, selalu ada ya pembahasan tentang F1 setiap minggu gitu. Itu ada. Dulu tuh balapannya cuma 16. Cuman berapa ya? Ya 16 race gitu-gitu sih rata-rata. Bit of chit chat, but really there's nothing for him to debrief from his point of view. Iya, hari ini kayaknya full Lawson deh, supaya si Max bisa full. Kalau dibagi-bagi kayak gini kan kayak kepotong gitu kan. Iya, lebih ke kayak males banget ya sih. Udah ngambil. Oh bentar guys. Any level of a lap at all, timed lap. Same with Sonoda, who's just had ASRock on. But it's about 3 runs. They're short compared to those others at the moment. It all helps, and again with Oscar, he didn't get the performance running yesterday, so he's just had a metronomic run plan, which was what McLaren were carrying over this morning, and then the rain has sort of scuppered it. So their lazy methodical shouldn't be the 2 words really. Their slow and methodical progress from this morning was all well and good until it rained and they wanted to crack on.
I guess the drivers this is worse for is Liam Lawson and Carlos Sainz. Liam Lawson's had 15 laps, Carlos Sainz 14, and if things are not to improve, they could lose a big chunk of testing. Sam?
There's been a lot of change at the Alpine team in recent times. This man, Flavio Briatore, he seems to have taken charge of the team along with Ollie Oakes, but the exact division of responsibility isn't exactly clear, certainly from the outside isn't exactly clear. Briatore obviously masterminded the Benetton domination. That was the previous name of this Alpine team before they were Renault. Jolien, when you were at that team as a driver, was Flavio involved, or was that post-Flavio era?
Oh, I'm not that old, Sam. Post-Flavio era was like 2009, wasn't it? It's I came in 7 years later, and he was nowhere to be seen at that point. He has now come back, and he's hands-on with the team there. He's literally by the pit wall, hands-on right now, but he's across what's going on, and he was obviously the mastermind of their best years as well, Flavio Briatore, with Pat Simmons at the helm there at Renault or Benetton even. 2 World Championships for Schumacher and Alonso. A long breakaway for them. and now Flavio back. Ollie Oak's there on a sort of day-to-day basis, but certainly Flavio behind the scenes is still having a huge say.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how that team is going to evolve. Taking Mercedes engines next year, and the 2026 World Championship is going to be the first year for, I'm guessing, since some point in the 70s, where there will be no cars on the grid with an engine designed by Renault competing in Formula One. The first Renault powered.
Oke guys, halo. Sorry. Jadi lagi ngambil apa? Ngambil apa sih namanya? Ngambil galon. Gue pesen galon biasa anak kosan.
Super Tech Play Life, and that was back in the Flavio era, the Play Life engines. Those power units, those engines.
Aduh.
So with a big change like that coming to power units, because
di tahun sekarang ada yang banyak, ada Bortoleto, ada Berman, ada Kimi Antonelli, ada Isaac Hajar, ada 4 yang langsung naik dari F2 ke F1. Sebenarnya Lawson juga sih. Banyak banget. Banyak yang naik dari F2 ke F1. Dan tahun ini adalah tahun yang terbanyak nih. Biasanya cuma 2, cuma 3 gitu kan. Paling banyak tuh 3 kalau nggak salah, zamannya Guan Yu Zhou, Piastri, sama satu lagi itu Logan kayaknya. Iya. Itu jatuhnya ganti sih, kayak gantinya kenapa? Karena kayak misalnya si Haas itu kan ganti semua tuh pemainnya. Dulunya itu kan Kevin Magnussen sama Nico Hülkenberg. Nico Hülkenberg pindah ke Sauber, Kevin Magnussennya pindah cabut dari F1 pindah ke WEC. Nah di Sauber juga ganti, yang Valtteri Bottas balik ke Mercedes walaupun jadi reserve driver. Guan Yu Zhou juga geser ke Ferrari jadi reserve driver. Alhasil Sauber, Hülkenberg nambah 1 nih sekarang, Bortoleto itu. Terus yang Haas juga nambah si Oliver Berman. Itu sih. Sainz gacor belum sih. Belum ketahuan sih. Russell juga dari kemarin juga P3. Semua di testing, bukan hanya ban. Semua sih. Max enggak, Max itu enggak keluar. Max itu hari ini absen guys. Hari ini digantikan oleh Lawson. Lawson full. Hari ketiga, hari terakhir baru Max keluar. Ini memang di hari kedua itu kayaknya ya kemungkinan yang nggak di yang nggak jalan lagi di hari ketiga itu biasanya hari ini bakal full push sih, full push. Ngebut lah, pokoknya mereka akan coba untuk ngebut-kebutan lah gitu. Max ada jadwal sim racing aja. Later we can be world champions, I said. Oh, why not? Why not? Max lagi belajar liburan sama Ayang. Lagi metik kurma ya, kalau kata si Wyvern tadi. Ban musim ini atau ya ban musim ini. Ban musim ini aja.
It's all change down here at Mercedes, and it's also all change up in the commentary box where David Croft and Karun Chandok are going to be taking over the mantle. So over to you guys.
Max sama Albon nggak tahu, mereka nggak ikut. Forza Ferrari.
Thank you very much, Alex, and a very happy Thursday to you wherever you are watching.
Apa perubahannya? Perubahan nggak ada sih F1 yang tahun ini ya. Tahun depan baru tuh 2026 baru. Hamilton bakal gacor gak bang? Tergantung. Hamilton bisa nggak lebih cepat nggak adaptasinya ke Ferrari? Itu sih. Yuki positif bakal masuk pool nggak ya bang? Aduh jauh banget. Ayolah. Nggak usah mikir kejauhan Yuki bisa pole atau enggak. Kejauhan. Kejauhan. Aduh mobilnya aja busuk, gimana? Kejauhan. Jangan pernah berpikir juga Carlos Sainz bakal bisa dapat pole atau bahkan menang ya. Aduh, Williams bisa top 5 aja udah bagus banget. Top 10 aja udah bagus banget. Kejauhan guys. Sorry bukannya gue bikin lu pada pesimis atau gimana, kagak. Kita ngomongin realistis aja. Itu siapa? Jack Duhan. Gitu. Duhan. Kalau semisal Yuki lagi nonton, lu mau ngomong apa bang? Lah, ngapain nonton balapan ngono? Buset, latihan kok nonton gue. Aneh. Ngapain Yuki nontonin gue? Gue suruh sana balap yang bener, latihan yang bener anjir. Dibayar malah nonton TikTok anjir. First driver William Sainz atau Albon bang? Sainz dong. Sainz. Tapi kayaknya dibuat equal deh. Tapi kalau dilihat dari performa sih Sainz ya. Sepertinya Sainz. Sainz sih, harusnya Sainz. Mulainya kapan ya? Ini udah mulai, lagi jalan. Cuman nggak ada yang keluar pit aja, lagi hujan soalnya. Kalau posisi leader nggak bisa ngaktifin DRS kah? Bisa aja, leader mah bisa aja. Kalau dapat mobil, pokoknya di mobil depannya, dia di posisinya itu ada mobil di depannya, jaraknya 1 detik atau kurang, itu bisa dapat. First driver Ferrari siapa bang? Gak tahu, belum dikasih tahu. Tapi menurut gue sih lebih ke arah kayak bakal equal, cuman Leclerc akan lebih diutamakan gitu loh. Leclerc ini mah. Ferrari mah pasti Leclerc. Gak mau diganti. Masih gerimis guys, masih hujan, jadi nggak ada yang keluar nih. Ini kemungkinan bisa ditambah 1 jam di extend kayaknya. Bang kata Yuki lihat nanti pas race. Sip. Rating film F1 menurutmu berapa bang? Mau nonton soalnya. Film F1 yang mana? Banyak nih, film F1 banyak banget. Ada yang F1 yang versi dokumenter, ada yang reality show bentuknya. Yang baru Drive to Survive. Drive to Survive itu nanti tanggal 7 Maret. Jadi belum nemu. Apex Legend. Nonton gini tuh di mana sih? Sama cara tahu jadwalnya gimana? Banyak. Lo bisa cek di websitenya F1, lo bisa cek di Google, ya kan, jadwal F1 2025 tes gitu. Udah, langsung keluar. Tikvin itu udah nyala, cuman suaranya kalah. Udah nyala, cuman suaranya kalah. Bentar ya. Aku gedein deh suaranya. Another recruit on the Alpine pit wall there. So very good. He's a tough character, doesn't he? Harusnya sih udah aman.
I got a lot of time for Dave though. Not only does he not suffer fools gladly, but he talks a lot of common sense. And he has been.
Halo, Rakzu. Bang, menurut lu season ini Norris Piastri gimana? McLaren gacor. Cuman dia lagi banyak banget nutupin banget sih McLaren ini. Maksudnya banyak banget yang disembunyikan. Gitu. WCC antara McLaren atau Ferrari ya. Untuk WDC antara Max, Hamilton bisa jadi, Norris bisa jadi. Jadi banyak sih kalau WDC itu gue megangnya banyak nih, ada Hamilton, Max, Norris, Leclerc. Itu bisa jadi itu 4 atau Piastri ya, 5 orang itulah.
couple of moments ago. 130.1 for him, 2/10 back to this man, Russell in the Mercedes.
Udah pada keluar lagi guys. Udah pada jalan lagi nih. Ada Russell yang lagi jalan. Lagi nyoba-nyoba nih pakai ban medium bekas hujan soalnya. Masih licin harusnya sih.
Without a time to his name so far, and only 7 laps on the board for Oscar Piastri. And McLaren are...
Oi. Kenapa, oi?
McLaren are really confident about what they've got, or they've had a few little issues. Because of the cars...
Buat teman-teman yang di TikTok, jangan lupa untuk bantu repost teman-teman. Kita ramaikan. Lebaran nggak ke Jakarta, oi? Enggak. Ngapain? Nonton live-nya di mana bang? Lu bisa masuk ke Discord gue juga bisa. Gue lagi nampilin di Discord gue. Iya, bantu repost teman-teman. Repost aja sih. Repost sama tap-tap boleh. Kita live sampai jam 6 sore ini. Masih ada 2 jam lagi. Ocon Inter Solo. Ya, Ocon tadi nyoba waktu hujan. Bang, menurut lo season ini Russell sama Antonelli gimana? Antonelli yang penting pokoknya bisa untuk adaptasi aja udah bagus. Sebenarnya target dia Antonelli ini itu tuh adalah bisa adaptasi cepat dan jaraknya nggak terlalu jauh sama Russell gitu. Dan menurut gua Mercedes itu bisa banget untuk ambil P3 secara konstruktor harusnya. Nah, ini adalah tugasnya dari Antonelli ini sekarang. Kimi untuk bisa tetap keep up the pace mirip lah sama Russell kalau bisa. Ya beda 0,1, 0,2 sampai 0,5 boleh. Tapi jangan terlalu jauh gitu. Bang Do, urutin 5 rookie yang prospeknya bagus menurut lo. Oke, dari yang paling bawah ya, Jack Doohan nomor 5. Terus nomor 4 gue mungkin bisa taruh gue bisa taruh si Lawson nomor 4. Nomor 4 Lawson. Bentar. Iya, nomor 4 Lawson. Nomor 3 Isaac Hajar. Nomor 2 ini Kimi Antonelli. Nomor 1 Oliver Bearman sih. Itu. Salah sama alasannya apa ya, kalau misalnya Jack Doohan, ya Bortoleto nomor 3. Alonso belum keluar dari pit, masih di pit ya. Alasannya apa ya? Kalau Jack Doohan, Jack Doohan itu susah loh adaptasinya, nggak tahu kenapa, padahal udah lama banget. Predik rookie yang bersinar. Ada 3. Menurut gua kayak Bortoleto, Kimi Antonelli sama Oliver Bearman bakal bersinar sih. Alonso rookie of the year, anjir lah. Max kemana bang? Nggak tahu. Lagi metik kurma katanya.
So Lewis, I've spent a lot of money on you, and how's it going to work out? Is that how that conversation's going?
Anjir, ini parah banget anjir. Si Crofty kampret banget ngomongnya. Jadi itu gambarnya itu tadi si Hamilton lagi ngobrol sama bosnya Fiat kan. Si Crofty ngomong, ini kira-kira ngomong kayak gini nggak ya? Lewis, lu udah gue bayar mahal nih. Gue perhatiin terus lu ya. Jangan jelek lu ya gitu. Liam kehitung rookie ya. Liam kehitung rookie. Mobil airbag komen lagi gak bang? Enggak. Aman. Bagus kok. Kemarin bagus. Cuman di slow cornernya itu. Isaac Hajar juga rookie lah. Testing day itu 3 hari. 3 hari dibagi 2 sesi, per sesinya 4 jam. Jadi jam 2 sampai jam 6, terus nanti jam 7 sampai jam 11 di jam kita ya. Science just show to Ferrari what they lost, ampun deh. Too early to judge like that lah. Too early. Lagian lagi testing, si Hamilton siapa tahu cuman San Mori doang dapatnya 30,0 tiba-tiba ya kan. Si Sainz-nya lagi sprint tiba-tiba ayo. Kalau tahu race-nya nanti seperti apa sih jangan nangis ya, itu aja sih. Liam Lawson itu termasuk rookie. Karena dia kan belum pernah full 1 season. Iya, tapi kan belum pernah full 1 season. Hitungannya rookie, Liam Lawson. Kan dia cuma sebagai reserve driver. Nah, kalau Jack Doohan itu udah 4 tahun jadi reserve drivernya Alpine. Ayo. Malah lebih lama daripada Liam Lawson. Kenapa masih dianggap rookie? Jack Doohan tuh 4 tahun. Gue lebih penasaran mesin RB 2026 bakal gagal atau malah bagus. Ya, sama. Apakah Sainz bakal bikin Williams masuk top 3 WCC? Nggak mungkin. Too early bro, too early. Ayolah, ayo realistis guys, realistis, being realistic lah. Sainz tuh bukan nggak sejago itu anjir. Nggak yang tiba-tiba kayak Max Verstappen yang tiba-tiba bisa bikin Red Bull dia juara dunia gitu. Anjir. Kalau dia skillnya Max Verstappen, gue yakin masih ada chance di sana. Enggak. Tetap di F1 dia hitungannya tetap rookie. Guys, gue sambil makan ya guys ya, lapar banget gue.
It's quick and they're confident, which I think is really interesting. Now, Oscar's had the morning running for the first 2 days, and Lando's got the afternoon today, as he did yesterday, but then Lando's got the morning tomorrow. If it dries out, I've got to tell you down here at McLaren, I think
Nggak, males gue nyobain gacuan. Nggak suka gue. Apa enak sih?
In terms of having the better conditions, it's a coin toss, isn't it, Crofty?
Enggak, kita nggak bisa.
The way they do it, unless you're Red Bull, who Max Verstappen always gets the last day to himself, pretty much.
Iya.
Here as well, this is Liam Lawson's last day.
Gini. Kita harus lihat secara realistis. Oke, Sainz jago. Tapi kan mobilnya enggak. Nggak mau langsung. Sebenarnya kan enggak. Karena banyak hal yang harus di-upgrade. Bayangin 5 tahun terseok-seok. Masa dengan datangnya Sainz tiba-tiba jadi juara, tiba-tiba jadi WCC atau P3. Aneh, bro. Itu tuh anomali banget, nggak mungkin seperti itu. Apalagi regulasi sekarang itu kan dari tahun 2022, sedangkan Williams udah busuk dari tahun 2019. Lu bayangin, 5 tahun ngeslam. Dan sekarang di tahun sekarang Williams lagi bagus. Tapi bukan berarti dia langsung ini bisa nih P3. Enggak gitu. Jadi Williams itu kenapa sih kok Williams busuk ya? Pertama, manajemen dari dulu itu masih dipegang sama si Frank Williams atau masih keluarganya Williams. Itu tuh jelek banget. Ya kan? Nah, enggak, 2010 nggak busuk bro. Bagus dia Williams tuh. Williams Martini itu masih bagus. Stroll masih bisa podium dengan Williams gitu loh. Nah, terus selain manajemen yang buruk dari Williamsnya, keluarga Williams sendiri, yang kedua financial problem. Sejak tahun 2018 cabut itu Martini, Williams itu tidak pernah dapat lagi title sponsor. Akhirnya keuangannya tuh buruk. Keuangannya buruk ya kan. Sampai tahun 2024 kemarin. Sponsornya sepi, Pak. Gitu. Akhirnya ya F1 kan butuh uang ya gitu. Akhirnya upgrade susah. Bahkan kayak software technicalnya aja nih, software director, software technical untuk upgrade mobil dan segala macam, mereka itu tertinggal. Anggapannya seperti ini. Tertinggalnya tuh seperti ini. Kita pakai Windows 11 nih, ya kan? Kita pakai Windows 11. Nah, Williams itu masih pakai Windows Vista, Pak. Masih jadul banget gitu loh. Itu kan udah outdated banget gitu lah. Anggap aja seperti itu. Jadi kan bisa dibilang mau upgrade-nya kayak gimana pun gak akan maju gitu loh Williams-nya pada waktu itu. Nah, sampai akhirnya datanglah Atlassian ini yang menjadi title sponsor. Ya kan? Apakah ini berkat dari datangnya Sainz? Enggak juga. Karena Williams tuh bagus sekarang tuh. Dari tahun sejak Albon masuk itu tuh udah bagus. Ya ketutup lah sama Logan Sargent, sama Franco Colapinto, ketutup lah. Tapi trennya tuh sudah mulai kelihatan bagus gitu. Makanya Atlassian ini datang, brand Atlassian ini. Terus habis gitu akhirnya mereka oke lah. Oke, gue jadi title sponsor lo gitu, mau. Nah, tapi bukan hanya uang yang dikasih, tapi juga yang dikasih adalah support program dan juga support dari support untuk software. Bayangin, akhirnya Williams itu punya update software gitu loh. Jadi kalau sekarang itu targetnya Williams, menurut gua sendiri ya, ini subjektif gua sendiri ya. Kalau Williams ini sekarang gacor, dia itu targetnya adalah P7 dari konstruktor. Itu udah bagus banget. Bonusnya adalah P5. Apakah bisa masuk top 4? Nggak bisa. Top 4 itu susah diganggu gugat untuk sekarang karena udah sekuat itu fondasinya. Williams ini baru. Jadi top 5 ngalahin Aston Martin itu lebih realistis daripada dia berusaha untuk top 3. Gitu. Jadi menurut gua Williams top 5 apakah bisa? Bisa aja. Tapi memang butuh konsisten yang luar biasa dari kedua driver sama dari timnya. Upgrade-nya juga harus on point. Susah loh, 24 race bayangin. Dari bulan Maret sampai bulan Desember lu harus bisa konsisten, itu capek. Gitu. Belum lagi kita ketemu apes, entah ditabrak, entah tiba-tiba mesinnya jebol dan segala macam, nggak tahu. Itu. Williams sama Alpine sama-sama bagus untuk tahun ini. Jadi Alpine lagi tren positif, Williams lagi tren positif, even Sauber lagi tren positif. Yang belum kebaca sebenarnya adalah si Aston Martin sama Haas. Kalau VCARB ya masih segitu, dia stuck. Gitu-gitu aja. Dibilang bagus nggak juga, dibilang jelek nggak juga. VCARB being VCARB. Gue nggak tahu kenapanya, tapi kalau gue rasa kayaknya memang Red Bull tidak mau VCARB ini terlalu dominan apa terlalu kuat nantinya. Kayak dulu zaman Toro Rosso. Akhirnya kan berantem kan, Toro Rosso sama Red Bull kan sempat berantem dulu tuh. Maksudnya berantem di track ya maksudnya ya, gitu loh. Dan sekarang kalau lo lihat VCARB ini pakai sasis mobilnya 2024-nya Red Bull. Gitu loh. Tapi pengembangan dan segala macam itu urusannya VCARB sendiri. Gitu. Prediksi gue bakal di atas Alpine di bawah RB sih. Jadi P6. Bisa jadi. Bisa jadi. Tahun ini Albon bakal gimana? Tahun ini Albon tuh bagus kok. Albon tuh orang paling konsisten. Kalau kita lihat dari tahun lalu, dari pertama kali dia pegang Williams, dia tuh yang paling konsisten kasih poin kontribusi ke Williams. Gitu. Iya, pakai sasis RB20. Tapi ada beberapa yang memang ada yang dirubah sama V-Carb. Tapi ya 85-90% lah sama. Iya benar, tunggu di race. Kalau precision testing ini benar-benar mereka cuma testing. Biasanya hari ketiga baru tuh gacor. No event career life, no. Hari ini enggak. Today I will not career life. Tomorrow. Tomorrow bonsai. Hey, thank you for coming by the way. Bang, langganan event resmi yang paling worth di mana? Sama aja, mau di video atau di benchmark sama aja, bro. Mereka kerja sama soalnya. Pre-testing masih R&D sih menurutku. Iya benar. Masih R&D banget. Nyoba ini, nyoba itu. Karena mereka lagi nyari karakter mobilnya seperti apa. Kira-kira upgrade-an ini oke nggak? Karena kan mobil ini kan pada upgrade semua kan. F1 TV itu butuh VPN. Karena F1 TV nggak masuk ke Indo. Rugi. Mending ke video.com. Atau enggak si Bensport. Deh. Langganan murah. Gua ambil setahun. Per bulannya 50.000 kan. Per tahunnya 360. Lebih murah per tahun. Kalau Vika bisa manage chassis itu sebenarnya bisa sih naik buat lawan AMR. Ya semua bisa. Cuman masalahnya adalah nyampe nggak gitu aja. Enggak juga sebenarnya. Jadi nggak hanya di hari ketiga, tapi dari 3 hari. Hari pertama, hari kedua, hari ketiga. Itu tuh kita bisa dapat. Kayak misalnya hari pertama kita ngelihat Red Bull, si Max geber, Lawson geber dan segala macam. Lawson kita pinggirin kan. Karena apa? Karena Lawson kan butuh adaptasi ya, karena dia baru pertama kali megang Red Bull gitu ya kan. Fine. Kita fokus di Max. Red Bull dengan Max itu tuh udah lama kan. Nah, yang yang kita lihat adalah ketika karakter dari mobilnya ini seperti apa. Red Bull di lurusan kurang kencang. Di slow corner itu jelek banget. Tapi di medium sama fast corner dia kuat. Nah, berarti kan permasalahannya Red Bull ini ada banyak nih. Gitu loh. Jadi belum jadi dari hari pertama, hari kedua, hari ketiga ini benar-benar diambil semuanya. Nggak ada testing lagi. Sudah selesai. Langsung 2 minggu lagi langsung balapan. Balapannya di Australia. Iya, precision testing yang official cuman 3 hari ini. So far yang konsisten cuman 2 menurut gua. Ada Williams sama Alpine. Kebalik, Bahrain itu baru sebagai season opener. Karena kan Australia pada waktu itu setelah COVID selesai itu dipindah ke Bahrain dulu. Australia tuh udah 14 tahun soalnya jadi season opener. Sebelum COVID tuh selalu Australia. Kalau kan nonton di Discord gue juga gak apa-apa, gratis kok. Masuk aja. Masuk aja Discord gue lagi nayangin ini di Discord. Lagi banyak yang ada yang nonton juga. Iya udah dari dulu. Williams ada chance nggak bang buat musim ini? Chance untuk apa nih? Untuk apa? WDC? WCC? Aduh, kalau untuk WCC enggak lah. Kayak P5 udah bagus banget. Target sih P6 atau P7 lah. Bang, kenapa kalau pramusim pada sandbagging? Apa emang kayak gitu semua tim? Bukan sandbagging. Lebih ke arah kayak mereka itu bukan sandbagging, tapi menyembunyikan performa aslinya supaya nggak ditiru sama tim lain, nggak disabotase, nggak dispionase aja. Sandbagging itu kayak lo yang tadi harusnya tuh performance-nya lo kan 100%, tapi lo cuma nunjukin 70% atau 80% doang. Jadi nggak semua performance-nya lo keluarin. Jadi orang-orang nggak tahu nih secara data lo jelek, tapi waktu ini nggak tahu kan. Gitu. Where is Red Bull? Dari Lawson? Iya, ketahuan kan langsung di copy. Apalagi banyak fotografer. Banyak fotografer yang kerjasama sama tim. Terus ada rekaman kayak gini kan ditayangin kan kelihatan langsung. Oh ini tuh di sini dia pakai ini, dia pakai itu, gitu kan. Bang, sebesar apa faktor luck berpengaruh di setiap balapan? Pasti faktor luck itu bisa jadi kayak 30% atau bahkan 40% dari race. Tapi luck itu keberuntungan. Faktor luck itu juga berpengaruh sama skill, berbanding sama dengan skill. Kalau lo nggak ada skill ya lo nggak akan dapat luck. Promosi kayak kroco pas terus, itu kayak gitu. Sama dulu sebelum regulasi 2022, Mercedes itu paling sering sandbagging. Oh pelan nih sandbagging nih, pelan nih Mercedes. Ferrari yang paling ngebut kan, wong. Red Bull juga, wah ini di series our year ya, di series our year. Pas balapan, anjir, Mercy jauh banget. Udahlah. Menurut lo joinnya Cadillac bakal nambahin kompetisi atau temporary aja? Nambah kompetisi dong. Cadillac udah keluar duit banyak coy. American Pride bro, nggak bisa. Max hari ini nggak ikut, dia besok. Ya nggak bisa dong. Masa orang itu udah jago ya, terus lu tahan, lu nggak boleh juara lagi ya, masa gitu? Nggak boleh dong. Dia berarti kan harus driver yang bawahnya kan harus yang ngejar. Orang semuanya regulasinya udah bagus kok. Cadillac tahun 2026, tahun depan. Winner lo udah boleh kok. Iya kemarin mati lampu Bahrain. Boleh dong Hanif. Boleh banget. Boleh push the limit, boleh. Tapi kan bukan tergantung drivernya, pengennya gimana, tapi kan kebutuhan tim. Bang, gua nonton WEC semenjak nonton WEC, nonton event jadi bosan. Bebas apapun. Kalau gua sih karena gua suka balapan ya, emang suka olahraga balap. Jadi ya gua semua gua tonton. Besok gua nonton WEC. Itu Ijuju pernah kenapa ya di mobil, sorry. Oh itu namanya flow fish. Jadi kayak diwarnain basicnya kayak di pilok gitu kan, tapi nggak permanen dan itu bentuknya masih cair. Jadi ketika kena angin, flow fish itu akan berbentuk kayak bentukan aerodinamisnya. Nah itu tuh buat dicek ini aerodinamisnya ada yang salah apa enggak dan segala macam itu untuk ke engineer-nya nanti. Lebih ke arah situ aja. Aneh banget lihat Sainz di biru. Lah gimana dengan Hamilton dengan warna merahnya, bos? Iya, ini testing. Aston Martin Valkyrie LMH debut besok, betul, iya. Dan dia nggak pakai hybrid ya. Aneh banget. Bang, kenapa Wing Driver harus turut sama tim padahal dia juga pengen juara, Bang? Lah, Wing Driver itu udah di taken kontrak untuk menjadi Wing Driver, bro. Untuk yang ngebantu. Ya, kalau lo melewati, lo memutuskan seenak jidat lo sendiri padahal di kontrak itu sudah tertulis jelas kalau lo jadi Wing Driver, ya lo bukan jadi Wing Driver yang bagus dan bukan jadi driver yang bagus, malah jadi pembelot lo jadinya, pemberontak. Ya lo dipecat. Link DC ada di ini, bro, bio gua.
Are you going to do a qualifying session, simulation in the morning? Probably not with these conditions. But do you want to get the car ready for a Bahrain Grand Prix in the afternoon? Maybe say, I don't know, Crofty, what? 4 o'clock? 5 o'clock? What time do you fancy a Bahrain Grand Prix if you're Carlos Sainz? So that is what they're going to do. So we're already down here.
Tips nikmatin F1, Bang. Belum nemu-nemu seru nontonnya tapi selalu penasaran sama F1. Coba Bro Richard, lo ke TikTok gua. Karena lo lagi di YouTube nih. Lo ke TikTok gua, lo nonton yang video yang gua pin. Itu ada, gua jelasin di situ.
It is going to be hot, so it might not be representative, but that is what's going to happen. Indeed, Williams guys have got the tires ready for what I'm expecting is going to be a two-stop race. They've even got
Siapa bilang Rosberg itu Wing Driver? Siapa bilang?
for Carlos Sainz. So
Enggak, bro. Equal. Rosberg sama Hamilton itu equal. Akhirnya Rosbergnya cabut, Bottasnya naik di 2017. Baru tuh di kontraknya Bottas baru dikasih oke, di kontraknya ditulis oke, lo jadi Wing Driver gitu. Rosberg enggak, Rosberg sama Hamilton tuh dua-duanya ini equal driver. Apa good season for Carlos? Ya, me too. What's the sort of information he's got to build that relationship with his new race engineer Williams, and you know what information does he want through a stint? Tadi hujan. What information does he want in terms of when they look at the data? Iya, betul, lebih ke situ. Betul ya, Sid. In terms of, you know, settings for the balance shift and the tire deck. So it's about getting into those sort of practices and just making sure that everyone. Berarti tahun ini Lance Stroll, amin. Sumpah, gue pengen dah. Biar hatersnya Lance Stroll tuh nggak ganggu Lance Stroll lagi, kasihan sih. Gue ngeliat Lance Stroll kasihan banget. Ada aja orang-orang sirik ya, haters itu. Lucu banget.
He is going to get the chance for a race start at the end of this morning session.
William sangat ada harapan untuk tahun ini. Dia kan lagi dapat punya sponsor banyak nih. Duitnya lagi gacor nih. Ya kita lihat lah gimana tim Williams bisa masuk ini. Iya, Audi 2026 masuk. Jadi kan udah beli Sauber. Pit stop strategi siapa yang paling bagus? Antara Mercedes sama Red Bull sih. Kalau gue bilang Red Bull itu suka ambil agresif strategi yang agresif banget. Yang terkadang tuh itu resikonya tinggi banget, tapi worth it gitu loh. Kalau lo bisa sesuai itu pasti worth it. Williams equal nggak bang? Sainz sama Albon? Iya. Sore, halo Iqbal. Mercy bagaimana bang? Mercy lagi bagus nih, trennya lagi positif, lagi naik trennya. Akankah tahun depan yang hijau menyala tahun ini jadi merah hitam tahun depan? Iya. Jadi kan udah beli sahamnya dari tahun lalu. Cuman kan perjanjiannya memang di 2026 baru Audi muncul. Lewis Hamilton bablas tuh. Ngelok. Lawson gacor bang. So far sih iya. Menurut lo kenapa Ferrari sering blunder di strategi pit stop kalah sama Red Bull Mercedes? Ya lebih ke strategisnya aja sih. Kalau kenapanya gue nggak paham. Strategisnya aja gimana ya. AMR 25 bagus gak bang? Belum keluar ya. Belum kelihatan ininya. Suka GP juga nggak bang? MotoGP gua nggak ngikutin banget. Tapi berita-beritanya ya dikit-dikit gue ikutin. Iya live di Discord. Cek aja Discord gue. Sains gacor. Main hari apa? Jam berapa? Main hari apa? Jam berapa? Main hari apa? Maaf, apanya yang main hari apa bro? Kalau Has punya potensi bersaing di papan tengah enggak musim ini? Has jujur gue belum kelihatan. Karena Has di precision testing ini itu bener-bener cuman ngumpulin banyak-banyak lab. Dia nggak ngejar apa namanya fastest lab atau bikin best lab, enggak sih. Dari kemarin bahkan mereka pakai high fuel tank, terus bener-bener ngecek semua mobilnya, testing ini itu. Bahkan tadi sempat shakedown pada waktu hujan. Jadi ya menurut gue belum tahu Has bagus apa enggak, jadi belum tahu. Baru ngikutin event aku bang, nggak masalah bro, welcome to the club. Event race utamanya hari apa? Oh, 2 minggu lagi, Jumat, Sabtu, Minggu. Balapannya hari Minggu, kualifikasi hari Sabtu, praktisnya hari Jumat. Tanggal 14, 15, 16 Maret. Prediksi Williams P berapa season ini? Kalau menurut gue P7, tapi kalau lebih bagus lagi Williams bisa P5 ngambil Aston Martin, why not? Hajar aja sih. Bang, gua nggak paham kok performa driver bisa jomplang tergantung dia di tim pabrikan atau independen. Bukan tim pabrikan independen, bukan kayak MotoGP, tapi lebih ke arah kayak tergantung timnya, tergantung mobil. Percuma jago banget drivernya kayak Alonso di Aston Martin, tapi kalau Aston Martin nggak bisa ngasih mobil yang bagus ya jelek. Mau gimana pun. Tahan nggak nonton biar sense nggak blunder. Kenapa? Ini kan baru precision. Nggak apa-apa lah, santai aja, nonton aja. Bang, sprint di event ini cuma sirkuit-sirkuit. Iya, cuma 6 doang, 6 sirkuit. Cuman Cina, Spa, Miami, Las Vegas, Brazil, sama Qatar. Udah tuh 6. Aku baru ngikutin, kayaknya tertarik sama Leclerc. It's okay, fine bro, aman bro, sis, apapun itu bebas, aman. Gue tuh sengaja kayak misal gini, kayak live Watchalong gini gue bikin itu tuh karena memang gue pengen ngebantu teman-teman yang F1 baru, yang baru terjun atau baru ngikutin F1 itu supaya lebih ngerti tentang F1. Jadi lu mau berawal dari lu cuman sukanya Carlos Sainz, lu cuman sukanya Carlos Leclerc, Charles Leclerc, terus lu sukanya cuman si Hamilton doang, atau lu bahkan suka Toto Wolff-nya, nggak masalah. Gue nggak pernah kayak lu harusnya ini, harusnya itu. Lah gue siapa anjir ngatur gitu. Gue cuman ngasih wadah, ayo belajar bareng, kita nikmatin bareng. F1 itu memang seseru itu gitu lah, supaya lu nanti ketika ada polisi F1 dalam tanda kutip ya, polisi F1 yang sok-sokan, yang suka sok-sokan paling ngerti tentang F1, itu tuh bisa lu hajar balik pakai argumen gitu. Gue juga benci banget kalau ada orang sotoy banget, lu harusnya ini, tai banget. Lu siapa dah ngatur-ngatur gitu. Kak mau nanya, emang kenapa Has ngumpulin banyak labs ya dibanding waktunya? Aku nyubi. Lebih ke arah dia lagi cari data sih. Mobilnya seperti apa, terus ketika ini itunya seperti apa. Karena lebih banyak itu seperti gitu, lebih baik ya seperti itu. Karena waktu precision testing kita jadi punya kesempatan untuk ngetes mobilnya habis-habisan. Kita jadi tahu dan menyiapkan, mobil kita tuh kurangnya di sini. Oke, kita upgrade yang ini untuk kedepannya, gitu. Seperti itu. Jadi mereka lebih cari data. Jadi bukan best time. Yang dicari pada waktu precision, jangan kalian jadi patokannya adalah best time, tapi adalah ininya, apa namanya? data yang diambil dari mereka tuh banyak apa enggak gitu. Lando nanti sesi kedua kayaknya. Kalau mau nonton di mana bang? Ada di video.com atau Bensport atau lu masuk ke Discord gue juga boleh. Ini web apa kak? Ini web live timing. Thank you by the way, Matt. Ablon nggak ikut testing nggak hari ini sama Max enggak? Max sesi 2 enggak juga. Hari ini dia nggak ikut. Bang, solusi dari lu buat penonton event lama tapi jenuh yang juara dia mulu, gak ganti-ganti bang. Gua bayangin, gue nonton Michael Schumacher dominasi, gue nonton Vettel dominasi, gue nonton Hamilton dominasi, gue nonton Verstappen dominasi. Apakah gue bosen? Enggak. Gue nggak bosen sama sekali. Gue happy. Gue tetap happy. Karena gue menikmati balapannya, bukan cuman siapa yang menang, siapa yang juara, enggak. Gue menikmati balapannya, strategi apa yang dipakai, terus gimana ada keadaan di luar track dan dalam track seperti apa gitu sih. Sistem poinnya gimana? Sistemnya ya posisi 1 sampai 10. Kalau pada waktu race dapat plus 1 poin. Kalau dapat fastest lap. Tapi harus di dalam top 10. Kalau nggak masuk top 10 dapat fastest lap ya nggak dapat poin. Gitu. Poinnya itu dari P1 sampai P10 aja. Guys, bentar ya, gue makan dulu ya, lapar gue. Nikmatin dulu teman-teman. Gue sengaja bikin Watchalong ini. Kalian ngobrol aja sesama penonton ya. Kalian ngobrol aja, saling ngobrol, tanya-tanya jawab, it's okay. Nanti ada teman-teman yang bantu jawab juga. Gue izin makan dulu ya.
Crofty, was that his driver coach with him, Lance Stroll? He was the one who went rallying a few weeks ago. Did you see that?
No, I didn't.
Lance did a day. No, that's his physio.
His personal trainer. Yeah.
I think it's
Nuno, isn't it?
I think it's
Nuno,
his driver coach, who's a big rally fan, and they
Portuguese.
both went rallying on a. Yeah.
Did he win?
In a C3 or no, I mean it was on a stage. It was quite well covered on the internet if you want to have a look at it. But I think Lance had a good time doing it.
Oh, Lance went rallying.
And the team.
I thought
Lance went rallying. Lance tried rallying.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is that after he went off-roading in Sao Paulo? He decided he'd do it for real.
Steady on. Although he didn't really go off-roading, he just went off and then got stuck in a gravel trap. So, strictly speaking. Now look, let me give you a little bit on George Russell, who's about to go off. If I show you the driver number, the 63, Mercedes have got that cooling hatch that you were referring to on Alonso's car covered up. But I think what Aston Martin are doing with that cooling hatch is actually cooling other bits of the car. What, I don't know, but I don't think it's only for the driver cooling, because they've had it open all test. So I think it's got a dual purpose in there, even though I think it's primarily meant to only be for the driver. But while you're looking at this front suspension of the Mercedes, look how high that top leading edge wishbone is compared to how low the back one is. You see the suspension upright, which is of course the push rod is going up from bottom left to top right. But look how high that upper wishbone is. It's crazy high. And if you look online, and I'll hopefully show you some of the pictures when that hatch is off and when it's exposed, there's actually a kind of suspension system on that top wishbone in between, which is partly covered by the driver cooling hatch. And it's quite incredible. Saw it yesterday, and it's incredible to see. And I think it is a bit of an innovation that Mercedes have got on that I don't remember seeing last year. And something that I think they're quite excited about. So there is definitely innovation, new bits on this Mercedes W16.
What's, gentlemen, the pluses and minuses of running it that high?
Go on, Ted.
Sorry, running it that high?
Yeah, so having something that
running
high, what would be the advantage and the disadvantage?
No, I mean, the advantage of the suspension is if they're running another member of the suspension on that wishbone, it's just to give the car the feeling in the corners, especially the slow-speed corners, that Mercedes have been lacking, and to treat the tyres the way that they want to, which is to heat them up as quickly as possible. It's all to the same end with Mercedes, is curing the two major problems that they had from last year, which is the randomness. You don't know which Mercedes you're going to get because it's very rare that it's actually in the right temperature window for the tyres, and the fact that it wasn't really great and they were losing quite a lot of time in sort of lower speed corners, as opposed to cars like the McLaren or the Red Bull or whatever. So it's all part of curing those problems. But yeah, it's quite interesting when you see it. It's like a sort of linked torsion, they're not torsion bars really, it's almost like a sort of anti-roll bar attached to those two in the middle. I'll show it to you in Development Corner on Friday if you're watching us on Sky in the UK and Ireland, or around the world on our YouTube channel. Sorry, go on.
I definitely will be. Thanks, Ted. Carlos Sainz just set the fastest of the first sector times we've had, and went a little bit slower during the middle sector, but could be on for the quickest time of the day so far. Could we get into, I asked, the 1 minute 29s? No. Sadly, we have missed out by 9/100ths of a second. Carlos, how could you?
There's an energy about the driver, and he's obviously still on one of the harder tyres, so not chasing peak performance, but I think it's just some of this is about giving Carlos the knowledge, I think, of, what is a car going to be like with lower fuel, and if you're pushing on, and then when we load the car up with 100 kilos of fuel for the race, what's the balance shift going to be? Because he hasn't experienced that with Williams, and I think that comes back to Ted's point earlier. When they load him up for his version of the Bahrain Grand Prix, that shift is good for him to understand and get in his brain of, okay, when we put 100 kilos on, I need to go plus 2 turns on the front wing, or I need to do X, Y, Z to have a balance correct.
That RB either has a paint job that makes it look like it's run through a gravel trap, or it has run through a gravel trap.
There's quite a bit of rash on there, isn't it?
Yes, there is.
Very odd.
Interesting. And Lance Stroll did indeed go and test a rally car. A Citroen Rally 2 car in Portugal. Co-driver was Nuno Pinto, his coach. But it was a test on one stage, on the, is it the FAFE stage? The FAF stage? The one with a big jump in Portugal.
Okay.
Rallying is not my specialist subject. I don't know what it is, but rallying is not my specialist subject, so rally fans, please correct me if I've got that wrong. George Russell with a 28.8 has gone quickest through the first sector. Nico Hulkenberg, 6th fastest with his latest lap time, and that's his best of the session so far.
Hamilton's having a go as well. So the drivers are all, maybe the track's starting to come back to them now a little bit. It's dried up a bit, and they're starting to find some performance. Hamilton now improving. So we are going to get into the 129s for the first time in 2025 here, Crofty, as we see Russell, a little bit of movement on the rear of the car there as he came through 14.
Fastest time we had last year, which was Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari. Last year's fastest time was a 1:29.92. We have a 1:29.87 for George Russell, and his former now teammate Lewis Hamilton could be about to go even faster still, and does so. A 1:29.6 for Lewis Hamilton on the C3 tyre, which is the one to be used for all performance runs, and Esteban Ocon's going for one as well. So George Russell, the Mercedes goes out, and we can compare them a little bit because they're at exactly the same time in terms of when they're on the track. We don't know fuel loads, we don't know engine modes, etc., but they'd be pretty similar, we'd have thought.
And it sort of picked up from where we ended last year, wasn't it? Mercedes and Ferrari close-ish, Ferrari with a tenth or two as an upper hand. I think for me, the big question around Mercedes is what happens when we go to the hotter tracks. Because we've seen in the past, haven't we, like Vegas last year, when it was cold, the car worked brilliantly, and they were competitive. And the British Grand Prix weekend, remember that Saturday was pretty nippy, and they qualified 1-2. It's when they're not able to get that consistency and repeatability across the season in a variety of conditions. So yeah, on a cold day in Bahrain when the track temp is 17 degrees, the Mercedes is working well. And I really hope for their sake that translates to the, when we go to hotter tracks, which make up the majority of the season.
So for this year,
simply
there's not much
lovely.
change, but there is a bit of change. They've tightened up the rules, or they've actually put a rule into the regulations now about what happens if you can't do qualifying. Yep. We were all talking about this over the Sao Paulo weekend when we had to come back on the Sunday, and if we couldn't get qualifying done, what would go on? So now the stewards are able to use the Drivers' Championship as a way to decide the grid if we can't do qualifying. And I think that's pretty straightforward and makes sense to me.
Yeah, I'd like to see that in reverse order.
Well, yeah, there is a bit of me that agrees with you on that one. It would never get through.
No.
Yeah, it would make for something a bit more interesting. Quite. And the final grid is now going to be published an hour before the start time. It was 2 hours. But remember, in Sao Paulo, Alex Albon got withdrawn at the last minute. Well, if that happens again, the grid will close up, and the final grid is now published an hour before the race, which is absolutely no use to commentators anyway.
Well, also, that's only 20 minutes before the pit lane opens. But it was quite funny because you're right, it got highlighted in Sao Paulo. I remember Rachel Brooks and I got to the grid, and we told the mechanics, I think it was the Sauber mechanics, that they were in the wrong grid spot. And then they sort of looked confused. And I went, no, you are in the wrong grid spot. And then all of a sudden, there's this chain reaction of 4 different car crews running around.
It had closed up and it shouldn't have done.
Yeah. And so I felt slightly guilty for, making them run around. But I was giving them the right information.
Yeah, and for all of us, though, who want to give you the information as it stands more than an hour beforehand, yeah, thanks for that, Rob. Everybody, we appreciate that. There is a limit on testing of previous cars. It's a maximum of 20 days now. There's TPCs that are between 2 and 4 years old, and FP1 sessions. Rookies, now, Karun Chandok, you'll be interested in this. Rookies that have completed fewer than 11 Grand Prix. No, sorry, it's 2. You officially don't count as a rookie for an FP1 session.
No, I don't. Can't do FP1s. So
it's a bit like at HRT, but you can do FP1s then.
I'll make the comeback for FP2. It'll be fine.
Either way, rookies that have done fewer than 2 Grand Prix now have 4 outings. That's 2 drivers per car per season. But if you are Gabriel Bortoletto, you get Sauber get their rookie FP1 sessions done with the first 2 races, because in Australia and in China, first 2 races of the season, he will have completed fewer than 2 Grand Prix, therefore is eligible as a proper rookie, so they don't need to bring another person in for that car. Same with Isaac Hadger, and same with Jack Doohan.
Well, he's done 1 though, hasn't he?
Oh, he's done 1, yes, good point.
Simply lovely.
So,
it's good to have more mileage for rookies. I'm always a fan when you get more opportunities for rookie drivers coming in.
Yeah, so 2 drivers per car per season. Obviously, Sauber are going to have to find someone suitable.
Antonelli will be the other one.
Antonelli,
that he was thinking of,
Thank you. Cooling system we have covered. The cars are getting heavier. Minimum weight now, 798 kilos up to 800 kilos. That's because the minimum driver weight is increased from 80 kilos to 82 kilos.
Which is good for people like Piastri, slightly taller drivers. Obviously, Nico Hülkenberg, Max Verstappen, Ollie Behrman.
Giants there.
Esteban Ocon, George Russell as well. Yeah, there's quite a few of them, isn't there?
Flexi wings clamp down. We kind of covered this yesterday. The front wings, starting from the Spanish Grand Prix, the FIA are toughening up how much flexing is allowed. Why it's got to be the Spanish Grand Prix, not the start of the season, I'm sure it's down to cost and cost cap, like that. But I don't.
I think it's because the first tranche of front wings have been signed off and produced, and the lead time to produce a different one is going to be somewhere 6 to 8 weeks.
Well, they should have made their mind up earlier then, or not.
Not
change their mind.
No. This thing about tightening up the bending, flexing of the wings, I feel like we've been talking about it for about 15 years. Remember we used to see those Red Bull wings sort of flapping about?
Oh, there was... do you remember...
With that man in the background, Mark Webber driving the car.
Yes, exactly. He tested about 7 during the Japanese Grand Prix one year, when he had a really wretched first few laps, and he was right at the back, and they just kept bringing him in, changing the front wing and going back out again. Do you remember... I remember the Red Bull wings, but do you remember the Felipe Massa Beagle's Ears front wing of the Indian Grand Prix, I think it was?
Yeah, 2011,
Yeah, I mean, the thing was almost taking off because it was flapping around.
That's what I mean. This thing of we're tightening up the rules of flexi weeks. I feel like this chat's been going on now for 15 years.
Well, they're tightening it up again, despite the FIA, Nicholas Tombassis, saying, I'm quite happy with it. Something changed over the winter where he became not happy, and the static load test is increasing on that one. And the fastest lap bonus point has gone.
I think that's good. I mean, we had a go. It made a bit of a story at some occasions, but it turned out to be a bit of a nonsense, basically, where anyone who had a free pit stop and a gap would take the pit stop and take the fastest lap.
Yeah.
That's not a true reflection of somebody who's actually done the fastest lap on merit. It's just someone who had a free pit stop.
So I'm going to disagree with you because I actually don't agree with you on this one. So I'm not playing it. I say keep the fastest lap bonus point, but make it available to all 20 drivers or whoever is still running. So you.
Watch all of the action. Let's go.
Big names wherever you look. Wow. Outrageous. It's extraordinary. Here to entertain.
Simply lovely. I tell you that.
5-star tennis.
On bean court.
Simply lovely. I tell you that.
And you'll get the scenario where basically everyone, if you did that, you get a scenario where everyone from 15th to 20th would pick the 2 laps to go.
Brilliant.
I tell you that.
What's not exciting about that?
I disagree.
You tell me what is not exciting about a flurry of action somewhere in the race at the end of a race.
It's not meritocratic and it's not fair to the person who's genuinely earned 11th, 12th place and doesn't get that point to be outscored by someone who finishes 5 places, 6 places behind them. That's not fair.
Meritocracy, I think you'll find, is so last year. That is not the world we live in these days. Do you want to talk about what happened at the World Motorsport Council yesterday?
They approved the Monaco Grand Prix.
Yeah, they did. Well, some did. Some people weren't allowed in.
Yeah, I read some reports online about that, but I don't know the details. So.
Well, no, none of us know the details. But there seems to be once again a story whereby the FIA president is deciding it's my ball. I'm going to play the game how I want it. Is that fair?
That's a whole different podcast, Roughly. We could be here for days and days.
Well, we are here for at least another day and a half.
Well, yeah, but I'm not sure it's one that the people at home are particularly excited by.
Either way, what did get approved, as you rightly say, at the World Motorsport Council was that Monaco is a mandatory 2-stop race.
Yeah.
Now, we've been crying out for changes to Monaco for years now.
And you know me, I've been saying that how many years have I been saying?
How many years have I known you?
Yeah, over a decade. The rule should be use all 3 tyres in every race, so we get 2-stop races.
Well, that's not necessarily going to happen.
Yeah, but at least there's a 2-stop race.
Yeah, it's 2 different compounds and a mandatory minimum 2-stop race for Monaco and for Monaco only.
I think it's good. I think we'll end up with a scenario where the lead cars and the lead drivers will do their strategy. But because overtaking is basically impossible now, you can have someone like this, like a Nico Hülkenberg, who, let's say, pits on lap 2, goes for a bunch of free air, and then, gets pace and lap time, catches back up to the train, who are managing their tyres going slowly. He could then go long and then pit on the penultimate lap. But it'll mean that he will run a faster race because he's trying to make the gap. There's a risk of a safety car, of course, in which case it negates it. But if you're in a team outside of the top 12, it's worth the go to do something different. So I think we will see people like Haas, like Sauber, Racing Bulls, you know, where they just roll the dice with one of their cars and try and do.
Lovely.
You could even do things like, let's do both of our stops in the first 5 laps.
Yeah.
And then just go along to the end.
You know who I feel sorry for in this new Monaco rule?
Go on.
The strategists.
Oh, yeah.
Because Bernie Collins, as we know, Monaco was like half a weekend off for a strategist, wasn't it? You know, you wake up on a Sunday morning and you go in and you say, right, we're just going to stop at lap 20 and we'll put the hard tyres on, then I'm going home. That was your strategy briefing for the Monaco Grand Prix, right?
Yeah, like last year it was even easier because you didn't stop at all, so even the pit crew had Sunday off in Monaco Crofting.
Exactly. I don't know why they bothered turning up.
I think I'd argue that one with you quite significantly, because I feel the pressure of the pit stop in Monaco was always a big one, because at some circuits, like here in Bahrain, if you miss the pit stop by a single lap, there's a chance to recover that. In Monaco, if you miss it by a single lap, you cannot recover. The traffic is so bad that you then become stuck in that position for the remainder of the lap. So often that one stop did feel like a lot higher pressure than it does at other circuits where you can later on recover, if that makes sense, Crofty.
No, it does. Do you like the new minimum 2-stop rule?
I've not fully read all the regulation yet. I'm concerned about it. I pick up on Corinne's point. I worry that teams at the very back of the grid, particularly if there's an early safety car, get their 2 stops out of the way, even stop twice under the 1 safety car, and then end up running very, very long, and others will end up stopping behind them. And some of the guys that I know did some simulations on that last night, and from the very back of the grid you could end up gaining 6 or 7 positions just by getting your 2 stops out of the way very early.
Wow.
So we've got to see it pan out. I think it might be a slight quick reaction to a very outside possibility of what happened last year. We've only had 1 year where that red flag happened in Monaco and we got no pit stops. So it's not for me at this stage, but I'm prepared to see it pan out. We probably did need to change something.
Yeah, I'd still like them to get rid of blue flags, especially for Monaco as well, and just see how that changes the dynamic of that race.
Yeah, and I think there are other solutions, like, you know, under a red flag, should that count as your 1 mandatory pit stop, or should we force people to do another pit stop if there's a red flag? That would have solved the issue, and solved the issue at many other tracks as well. So there's a few things to look at. Let's give it a try this year. We've got softer compound this year anyway, so maybe we didn't need to change anything for this year, so let's see.
Yes, the C6 Squidgy is coming in for Monaco. Now, your trackside, turn 14 and 15. There are cars.
Yes.
Did you want to talk about them?
There are cars, and there is no rain at the minute, so that's quite good. But I came down to the final turns just to see the cars coming down this sort of final straight, the turn into the absolute final, the start-finish straight. You can see Alonso coming down now. As he turns in 14, there's a slight dip before he hits 15. So you see the sort of back of the car drop down a little bit, and then onto the start-finish straight. He must be going, oh no, he's just going very slowly on the start-finish straight. Now we've got Ocon. You see the little dip on the Haas, just comes between 14 and 15. And then it is impressive to hear them pulling the gears down the main straight, get that car back up to speed. It's just a tiny dip just on the exit of 14 before they go into 15, but nice to be trackside. It's, you know, I very rarely get to stand in this position. Fantastic to see the cars coming through at speed and to really watch the performance of them through these corners. But I'll throw it back to you for now, Crofty.
What I love as well, Bernie, is that you referred to it as turns 14 and 15. I've been saying for a while, in fact, all my life, well, while the Bahrain Grand Prix has been going on, that it's 2 corners, and every single driver says to me, no, it's just a 1 corner.
It is just 1 corner.
What does every corner have, Kareem? An apex, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a double apex.
Where's the apex of 15?
It's there. Where's my track map?
Where? Yeah. I'd like to know how many times you've driven through that corner to show me where the apex is.
14, right?
That's the apex on the
there,
inside. Yep.
Apex there.
You don't get to the inside of 15, do you?
You don't need to.
There's no apex.
There is no apex.
corner.
It's on the inside. This is a corner.
It's a fictitious.
It says here 15, and there's a kink. Therefore, it's a corner. Corner's a kink.
False.
Bradley Rankin says Karun is right with the bonus point for fastest lap. I think there should be a point for pole. might make the championship a bit more interesting. But Joey says, Crofty, I agree with you. Make it available for everybody. And even if there's little action at the front, watch it liven up at the mid to back of the back. Would give a chance for those whom points are hard to come by too.
Yeah, it's not charity, is it? This is a meritocracy. It's just like, why don't we just dish out points for who's got the best sausages then?
Yes.
Yeah, you could be the judge of that. I'm sure you'd sign up for that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, well, you know me, I'd have points all the way down to the final finisher.
Based on hash browns?
Based on hash browns, no. I'd have points down to the final finisher because it just makes it easier for people to understand the championship, you know?
Yeah. Yes, but that's a whole different thing, yes. I actually don't disagree with that. If you had points for all 20 places,
yeah,
I don't actually disagree with that. But I think just giving somebody a point for being in the, you know, getting a free pit stop at the end and a fresh set of tyres, that's all right.
Keep your comments coming through at Crofty F1, or is it at Karun Chandok? Is that your?
That's me.
That's your X name.
Yeah.
You can contact either of us while Karun posts pictures of him and I in the commentary box.
It's lovely to be back with you in the commentary box.
Lovely. What's even lovely about that picture? It is lovely to be with you, I must admit. There's a picture of Bernie Collins in the background as well.
Bernie doing her thing.
Alex Brundle, as we hand down to you, maybe we'll take another picture and get you in on this one.
Hello, guys. Welcome back down to the pit lane. I've dropped down to Alpine, actually. I don't know, it just all seems to be going rather well, doesn't it? Fifth in the hands of Gasly yesterday. They're up there today as well. They were saying before the season that it would be a good effort to be best of the rest, or at least that's what Gasly was saying. Running through the test programs, he's out of the car for the moment. They've just cleaned a little bit of flow viz off this rear wing. A lovely little tweak caught my eye, though, down towards the front of the car. Look at the top of the push rod here. Very clever little pouch almost in the bodywork.
Lovely.
Right at the top of the push rod, and it's a quick access panel for this area at the top of the push rod where they can fit the shims for ride height and front camber. Beautifully done. Oh, look at this. We're going to have a demonstration look. Shims go there in the top of the push rod to change the dynamics of the front of the suspension in the Alpine. I think it's important not to be fooled too much over these 3 or so days of testing, because we're looking at some teams and thinking, for example, Alpine are doing well, but you've got a range of chassis down the pit lane. Some of them are Evolution, quite clearly, a bit more as Alpine have been doing, a bit more as Haas have been doing. Some of them are complete revolution, although most of the teams will tell you they've changed every single aerodynamic surface, but you can see a little bit of the difference. I think what we're seeing a little bit here with Alpine is a team in Evo mode, continuing on with a previous concept, and that's why they're potentially looking a little better. But it's not half bad, is it? Being up in the top 5 on both days so far and looking relatively strong.
Cheers, Alex. Fascinating stuff down in the Alpine garage. Thank you very much for all your tweets that are coming in. I can't stop calling it Twitter. I'm sorry about that. Chara Lee says, I agree with you, Crofty, for the fastest lap point. Anyone should get it, even if the guy in last place goes for it. What stops the guy in 19th doing the same? Then we have a battle. Cracker says, on the 2022 track map, turn 15 exists. I've seen enough. Name it Croft Corner. Now there's an idea, Cracker. Thank you very much indeed. Nick says, Karun, nice to hear you talk sense, keeping Crofty under control with all his ideas. Yeah, hey. Having ideas, who'd have thought it? And on the subject of Karun's photo, is that just the lighting, or is that some pretty serious sunburn from Crofty? No, I'm sat next to a screen that's got the F1 logo on it, and it's red, and it's reflected all over my face.
Sunburn? You've been in England all winter.
Yeah, I haven't been away at all. Joey says, for Monaco, just implement a rule that the current mandatory 1-stop or 2-stop doesn't apply under red flag conditions. There's a bit of me that thinks, well, there's a lot of me that thinks, Joey, that's not the most stupid suggestion I have ever heard.
Well, the tyre pit stop under red flag, I think it was 2012, where Sebastian Vettel was under pressure, and then had a free pit stop, and that was the end of it. And we've all been saying that for years, and okay, there's a safety element of it, but
It's absolutely fine. Change your tyres if you want to, because that way, if someone has a damaged tyre, they can change it, but it don't count towards your mandatory stop.
Correct. Exactly that. And I think, again, it's one of these things, isn't it? We've been saying it for over a decade, and for some reason, clearly our voices aren't powerful enough, probably.
Well, when you are F1 president, that will change. I know it will change. Karun Chandok for president. Hamilton going quickest for the first sector. Danny Cable says, do away with the fastest lap points. Give the point to the driver with the most overtakes on track. But that rather hinders the person who goes and gets pole.
Yeah. I think the point for pole is interesting, isn't it? Because a lot of other championships do that.
Yeah.
And that is a more pure point. You're rewarding somebody for performance.
The argument against that used to be, love this, by the way.
That's a great angle. Also, did you realise how tight turn 11 was?
Yes.
I didn't realise, and I've driven thousands of laps around the circuit. I didn't realise how tight the apex was until that camera angle.
It is a bit, isn't it? The argument about point for pole used to be, well, we're not going to do that because we might have the championship decided on a Saturday. Sprint races have rather undone that particular argument, to be fair.
Good point. He went wide 11, that's why he aborted the lap.
Where are we?
Let's see here. Lewis gets on the curb, turns in. Always a bit of understeer there. He's just trying to mash the throttle and carry speed out. It is generally an understeery sort of corner. The wind is sort of a crosswind today. It is very wind affected, that corner, because you're basically turning 180 degrees around. Is quite exposed, so there you go.
John Dawson says, Crofty, one rule I'd like to see changed is the laps drivers being allowed to unlap themselves after a safety car. They're there for a reason. It wastes race time allowing them to unlap. The thinking behind it is that when a race restarts, you can get the back markers kind of in the way of the battles that we all want to see, and that's why the lap cars are allowed to unlap themselves. I don't necessarily have a problem with it, as long as all the lapped cars are allowed to unlap themselves.
It either needs to be all or none. It
Yes.
can't, obviously, as we all know from Abu Dhabi, it just can't be a select few.
Alex Brundle, come on in, sir. You want to add to this chat?
Yeah, I actually agree on the fastest lap point. It was really time for that to go. Not on the basis that, you know, I don't really mind, you know, cars that aren't in the hunt or have a gap big enough behind them to come in for a set of softs, firing in the fastest lap. But it's something we see in Formula 2 as well, at the street circuits, which it bothers me as a commentator, and it's something which is difficult to explain to the viewer, which is drivers in a row on a street circuit, unable to overtake each other, backing off to do the fastest lap within the traffic queue, and then going again about their race.
Yeah.
And I just think to sit there and say to the viewer, hey, guess what? You know the cars that are driving line astern around the racetrack that we're professing to tell you are racing each other. Well, actually, not. They're not. They're racing the stopwatch, even though they're nose to tail. It's a difficult thing to put together, isn't it?
No, I totally get that in what you're saying, but in terms of F1, you're normally going to have to come in and make a pit stop. What's wrong with a flurry of activity in the pit lane and a flurry of activity on the track with everyone, you know, charging for, you know, the last couple of laps or whatever? I don't see how that's a bad spectacle for fans watching.
I do agree. It is rather also a moment sometimes that highlights the gaps in the field.
Yeah.
When somebody has enough time to take a pit stop at the end of the Grand Prix. You know, occasionally the fastest lap effort can go wrong or something similar. But yeah, I'm a purist at heart, despite how much I enjoyed this year's mega livery reveal at the O2 Arena. The purist inside me was having a minor meltdown at that moment as to how much I was enjoying that event. But yeah, I like to see a Grand Prix. I like to see racing for racing's sake, dishing out the fastest lap point all the way down. Although, you know, if it must remain, I do agree with you that sending it all the way to the rear of the field to give somebody like, you know, Sauber, who I'm standing outside their garage right now, the opportunity to snatch a point, hear what Karun says then about
lovely. I tell you that.
it being unavailable for 11th, but then available all the way down to 20th. But you know, the 11th place team can still go and try and get the fastest lap themselves. So, you know, that's an option, isn't it?
Certainly is. Well timed that, because you've just finished talking as Lewis Hamilton makes his way around the final 2 corners and sets another fastest lap of the day, 1:29.3 for Lewis Hamilton. That Ferrari, the prancing horse, beginning to stretch its legs and move from a trot into an agile canter.
It looks usable. It looks user-friendly. It doesn't, you know, we saw on several occasions last year with Lewis, you know, he would rather have been anywhere else on the planet than the cockpit of the W15. It's days where the car just didn't seem to work for him. But just watching the response to it there, it didn't look like a lap where he's trying to rag the last, you know, a couple of tenths out of it. It looked like a safe lap, but it looked like a lap where the car was responding to what he wanted and where he wanted to place it. And
I tell you that.
It's giving him the confidence to do what he wants, and I think that is a good sign.
Absolutely. But you often get that, don't you? You know, in your final year, when you know you're moving on somewhere, it's never all roses. But I think it was exasperated by a car that was so difficult for the team to get working, right? Let alone the drivers to feel happy in it.
The only thing I will say is, the only thing I will say is that the ride quality doesn't look as comfortable as you'd like. I mean, we saw last year Ferrari when that was a different issue, I guess. Last year, when they had the bouncing was introduced when they introduced the floor. It's a big air intake there in the Alpine.
Yeah.
Big fan on the air intake, rather.
You're a big fan.
Oh no, it's not on the air intake, is it? It's on the. It's on the halo fan for the driver cooling. Sorry, it's blowing air on him. Sorry, it took me a second there to work it out. But yeah, that's the only thing I'd say about the Ferrari. You can see there's a bump on the entry into turn 8. You just saw the front of the car do this little hop. Similarly into 11 down that straight. It's just a little bit of vertical movement, which suggests the quality's not as good as he'd like.
Yeah, Bernie was saying that was the only car turn 12 that she could see sparking. As it was going through turn 12. Now, we talked about this man a little earlier, and we referred to him as Fernando Alonso's best mate, and for the next few moments, he's Laura Winter's best mate. Hi, Laura. She's with Pedro de la Rosa.
Thank you very much, Crofty. Thanks, Karun. Yes, Pedro de la Rosa is alongside me. Apparently, you're my new best mate. They were saying you're Fernando's best mate right now. He probably isn't my best mate, if I'm honest, because I've dragged you from a warm garage out into what is a relatively colder paddock, so I'm sorry for that. At least it's not raining.
It's not raining.
How's the morning going?
Okay, it has been interrupted by the rain, so we haven't really done much. Now Fernando has gone out, he's doing some long runs, so just trying to understand really the car, the new package, how we degrade the tires, how we evolve under these wet and cold conditions, really, because we were not expecting, well, I personally was not expecting to be, this cold. Last year it was a lot warmer. It has an effect on how the tires work and also the cooling on that car. But we're just learning, it's that phase of pre-season where every team is learning, and just you have to just concentrate on what you have on your car. Don't look too much to the sides.
I don't think anyone was expecting it to be quite as cold as it is. But Aston Martin did bring one set of inters and one set of wets, but you haven't been out on them, have you?
No.
Just explain that process to us, the fact that you did choose to bring those tyres to Bahrain, where you wouldn't typically expect rain, but I guess, was that a decision based on long-range forecasts that you saw and thought we need to bring them, or...?
Yeah, the decision was taken before actually we knew that there was a risk of rain, so it was just as an emergency. They decided to take 3 sets of intermediates. However, we haven't used them yet. There was a small window of opportunity to use it in the morning, but we are just waiting if it gets wetter, maybe tomorrow, but it's not looking like, hopefully. But if it's not free, if you run those sets of intermediates, it runs out of your allocation of 30 sets. So we're just hoping that we can run dries. If tomorrow it starts raining again, there's no time, we have the intermediates, really. But let's cross fingers, because we have so much work to do, and then we have so little time. We have now Fernando in the car. In the afternoon, Lance will come. Tomorrow we'll swap drivers again. So we just hope for dry weather. It's going to be cold, that's for sure. I mean, I've been testing all my year in Spain, all my life in Spain, pre-season testing, and I had to go through the jokes of, you know, all the British people saying it's rain in Spain, we come to Bahrain, and it's rain in Bahrain, you know, so...
I know, I couldn't believe the forecast. Look, and you mentioned, of course, you have a lot of work to do. I know we had very reliable running yesterday, but for Aston Martin, it was the fewest laps. Can you just explain some of the challenges and issues perhaps you saw yesterday that you've been trying to overcome since?
Yeah, I mean, there were just, I mean, it's just some minor issues, technical issues in the morning. The afternoon was mainly related to the power cut that affected the telemetry, so for precaution we were not out, and for 1 hour. So we lost a lot of laps, you know. I mean, Fernando did 46, Lance did 39, so we are just behind schedule. That's why we are praying for dry weather. But it's the same for everyone, you know. We just didn't accomplish what we wanted yesterday, and we have a lot to do in the next 1.5 days.
In terms of what you are seeing on track, though, are we moving in the right direction in Aston Martin?
Yeah, I think we are learning, you know. I mean, we don't know really, you never know. You don't know your package, you don't know your car, you don't know how it's going to respond to changes. That's what we are learning right now, and let alone how it will compare to other teams. So it is a relative game, you know, we always say, but we are learning and we are happy where we are at the moment.
That's testing, isn't it?
Yeah,
nobody quite knows where they stand.
No one knows, and especially with there's so many. I mean, it's already difficult to interpret your results, let alone other people's with fuel loads. But now we have so many different compounds. We have only brought the three hardest compounds, which are the C1, C2, C3, which are the ones that will race here. Other teams have gone for the C4, C5, C6, so much softer, much faster. So you just have to be very careful with which team you compare in with what circumstances.
Yeah, great stuff. Thank you very much, Pedro. Good luck for the amount of work you've got left to do as well.
Yes, no, they have. Unfortunately, I'm not going to do a lot.
You can just chat to me all day.
Yes, exactly.
Perfect. Back to you guys.
Thanks ever so much, Laura. Thanks, Pedro, as well. I dispute that, Clay. Nobody knows where anyone is in testing. I bet the teams have a bigger handle on it because they've got way more data available to them, Karun Chandler. And also, one thing struck me in that interview from Pedro, who's a past master at the testing interview, you know, when Laura said, are you going in the right direction? Yeah, well, you know, we've got a lot to learn. That's either keep cards close to chest or it's not necessarily all going in the right direction.
I think, though, Crofty, nowadays, because F1 is it's gotten so much closer in the last 2-3 years, right?
Lovely.
There's a few factors. One, you only know what fuel weights and engine mode you're running. You don't really know what your opposition are running. And a slightly different engine mode, a slightly different fuel weight, and suddenly there's a difference of 3 or 4 tenths. Which, guess what, in current F1 is worth, you know, 5 places on the grid.
Yeah.
First. So I think that's the first point. The other point is that because we've got such a big calendar with such a big variety of circuits and conditions nowadays, as Oscar Piastri gives the "what are you doing" wave to Nico Hülkenberg out on track.
Yeah, well, I think we're going to see exactly why that wasn't there.
Yeah, I think, though, just because somebody's quick in Bahrain on a day where it's cold doesn't mean that'll be the case in another track. Here we go.
Watch
down
this.
into
turn 8.
Turn 8. Yeah, Hülkenberg just dawdling. Oh, it touched.
It is contact. That is absolute contact. Did Nico Hülkenberg know that Oscar was there and steaming down the inside? You kind of think he did because he was letting him through.
Yeah. Why is he dawdling on the racing line? Well, it's not quite the racing. He was wide, but not. But I think Oscar went wider than Nico expected.
Yeah, but Nico, to me Nico knows he's coming because he's been told Oscar's coming. He's gone wider to let him through.
Yeah.
But he's not. He's done the meatloaf. 2 out of 3 ain't bad. And the third bit should have be a little bit slower on exiting the corner, and you're not going to make contact.
Yeah, or just park it on the right-hand side, so you're fully off the line and let Oscar go around you. So, yeah, he could have made more of an effort to go fully to the left and stay on the outside.
I tell you what, drone was in the right place though, wasn't it?
It was. I'm really enjoying that drone.
Yeah.
Great.
I tell you who'd enjoy that drone, the FIA stewards, especially if there was a drone like that at every single corner. You could make some proper decisions based on that footage, couldn't you?
That's
no need
true.
for static camera.
Yeah. Here we go.
One overhead.
And this is where Oscar, it's a bit of like indecision. He doesn't quite know what Nico's doing. He's also gone deep, in fairness to Nico. Look how far he is. We just take a freeze frame there.
Yeah.
You know, Oscar's probably 2 cars width away from the inside white line of the apex. So, yeah, but Nico's like he's dawdling along as he's, you know, at this point. Just go fully to the left.
Park it, park it, park it. Oh, don't park it. Bang.
Simply lovely.
Yeah, I think Nico could have done more move out of the way, but equally Oscar overshot the braking there as well.
Oscar pinning the blame on Nico with that gesture. Any damage, Alex Brundle, to that McLaren car?
Lovely. I tell you that.
Yeah, there was a little scrape on the left front end fence. The front end of it's disappeared off. It's evaporated on access to the garage, as you might imagine, by the time we'd got down here at McLaren. But I just saw it being carried away, and there was just a witness mark, basically, of contact for that McLaren. It's an interesting one, that, isn't it? As we see the nose box there, look, the nose box of that McLaren, still with flow vis. That's obviously seeped into the front end of the nose box. The new front wing coming down then for Piastri. It's a bit of a nightmare, isn't it, in testing? Because you're obviously trying new parts, and they're going to be relatively low, you would imagine, on specifications of almost everything in terms of spares. You know, you bring one of or maybe 2 of each type of part that you want to try, of course, in a cost cap limited F1 development program, and then and that's about it. So that's that front wing loss for a moment. They should be able, though, to repair that one. The damage didn't look too bad. Even the dive plane that you can now see on the driver's left front of the car was still intact as it went away. So I suspect they'll give that one a clean up, a glue up, and then send it back to carry on testing with it.
Cheers, Alex. Thanks ever so much. Thank you to Bring Me Sunshine, who has tweeted this. The Monaco tyre regulation change is just a sticking plaster to cover the fact that the circuit is no longer fit for purpose. Either make the cars smaller, brackets unlikely, or modernise the circuit, brackets impossible. Neither will happen, so lose it and give a proper track a chance. Now, I hate to disappoint you, Bring Me Sunshine, if indeed that is your real name. Mike, I think, is his real name. Monaco's going nowhere, and it will stay on the F1 calendar for a long, long time to come. I think they've just signed a new deal as well. And Monaco is important for many, many reasons. And whilst, yes, I agree, it is not the most spectacular race you're ever going to see in your life, it is still one of the most watchable races because you are never sure what's going to happen at Monaco, given the conditions you're racing under. And Karun's going to tell me what it's like to be a driver racing in Monaco in a few moments. But Saturday qualifying and the qualifying hour in Monaco is one of my highlights of the season, watching and talking and commentating about Formula One. It is epic to see what the drivers do there. You have to kind of witness it to realise just how tight those streets are. If you haven't, I totally understand that, but I really hope you get the chance at some stage in your life. And I love the Monaco Grand Prix, and I love the history of it. I love going back there year after year after year and seeing what drivers can do on streets, Karun Chandler, that are not made to be racing cars.
But I kind of think that's the point. You know, and those who know me know that I'm a purist to the core. But I think the fact that the cars have gotten so big, I now think it's time for us to evaluate a different layout for Monaco and create some overtaking opportunities, some wider paths.
I agree.
Simply lovely.
Anyone who's been in Monaco over the years will notice how much land has been reclaimed out in the harbour. There's, you know, construction going on everywhere. And maybe there's a point where you need to go and just elongate the lap, you know, come down into Portier, turn left maybe, or go out into that new development there, come back into the tunnel. I don't know, just create some part of the track which is wider.
You can widen the Nouvelle Chicane surely as well.
Yeah, but it needs, I think, more. It needs another loop added somewhere just to increase the distance and introduce some wider paths. You still need to have, I think, those big iconic parts, up Saint-Devote, past Beau Rivage, Casino Square, all that stuff. That's part of it.
Turn left at Portier.
Yeah, and then do another loop somewhere. Just make it part, but crucially, it has to be a part, not just more of the same. it has to be a part of the track where it is wider and wide enough to accommodate overtaking with the current cars. That's the problem. The cars are just too big.
I agree. Maybe if the FIA decide that from 2030 we'll go back to V10s with sustainable fuels and the engines get a bit smaller, maybe the cars can get a bit smaller then as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole other thing. I don't know why. If we're talking about that for 2030, why don't we do that for 2026?
Well,
I was banging on about this for years, saying I fundamentally think that I'm not a fan of the way we're going for 26.
No, well, you're not wrong. But we're beyond the stage where we can pull back.
Yeah, we can't pull it back. But you know, you think of the hundreds of millions that the engine manufacturers are pumping into making the engines for 2026, only to be told, oh yeah, by the way, 4 years, that technology is going in the bin, we're doing something else. Whereas at least with the current cycle we got now, they had a 12-year cycle, which is worth justifying.
But there's a bit
cost.
of me that says if you can accelerate the development of sustainable fuels and get to a point where you can manufacture more of it, but not use more energy than it takes to make the fuel in the first place, then let Formula One do that, because that benefits the world.
Correct, but I think F1 should be the accelerator, which is why I was banging on about it being the case for 2026, not waiting another 4 years. I think F1 can be key to accelerating that process.
Let's accelerate back down to the paddock. James Vowles, whilst we watch his driver, Carlos Sainz, out on the track, is with our roving reporter, Craig Slater.
Thank you. Yes, I'm with James, who I think looks quite satisfied with how everything's gone so far. I mean, a strange test. You come to Bahrain, you get a power cut, and then you get rain. But are you working through your program okay?
Yeah, definitely. I don't know what I look like, satisfied or unsatisfied now. I'm questioning myself. No, as always, it's testing. I mean, what I really love about our sport is I think it's awfully close up and down the field. It's really hard even for us to determine where the cars are. Just happy that from the second at our shakedown that we ran the car at the door at 10 a.m, it's been working faultlessly since then, and that's great to see. That's a part of it. It's responding to setup changes. It's windy here, windy and cold and not really normal conditions, so we've got to be a little bit careful judging too much by what's going on, but in terms of our program, we're running through it.
I mean, you look well prepared. You had to make some tough decisions last year. At least those tough decisions are bearing fruit, it would appear now.
I think that's probably a fair way of putting it. As I've always said all the way through, this is always just an evolution of where we were last year. It's the good pathway. We have lots of great people around us. There's some good things to come in our future, but I think a lot of the decisions we took, both structurally within the team, but also with Carlos being here early on last year, are what paying dividends now.
Yeah. His influence you've talked quite a lot about already. Is it continuing on? I mean, he is putting an extra little bit of spring in everyone's step, his level of professionalism and dedication, and what he's done in this game.
You've summarised it well. Yes, he's continuing to, and I expect him to for years. It's not something that is a one-off or when you turn up. In the garage, we have two fierce drivers who know that they have to up the game against each other continuously. It's the best thing you can hope for. Human beings need to be pushed to get the most out of them, and we have that. And I mean that in every positive sense of the word. There's a spring in everyone's step. I think you put it the right way. I often use body language, but there's a level now of understanding. And almost what I'm now seeing on the other side is everyone has to step up. That's the journey we're on, and let's make sure none of us are held behind.
Yeah. Alex, you sense, kind of needed that. I mean, if he'd been another young driver alongside him, I don't think it would have been as motivating.
No, I think you're spot on. He has a race winner next to him who's not political, wants the team to be successful, and it works well. But Alex knows that's exactly what he needs at this stage.
Yeah, but listen, people, you're on a journey, but you want to make steps along the way, including this season, I'm sure. One or two are already thinking, could you be in the fight as best of the rest between the top four? I mean, is that too peremptory to go along that line?
I think the top four are the top four. I don't think you're going to see...
But beyond that, I guess, the next best, I suppose.
Exactly. What we have to be doing is, the midfield is very tight. I think a 10th separates, if I'm roughly guessing it right, a lot of us. and it's going to be a very close battle. Our job is to make sure we're coming out on top in all of that.
Okay, and just finally, any particular cars caught your eye in terms of having made a step? I mean, McLaren looks good, Ferrari, people are thinking looks significantly enhanced as well. What do you think?
I think you've summarised it. I'd say the top four. So McLaren, Ferrari, Red Bull and Mercedes have all done good work over the winter. I think a lot of people have. We've all moved forward. Look at the times we're doing now, and they're quick, and people aren't yet properly trying. But none of them have caught my eye. I'd say they're all evolutions, and that's a good thing. That just means we're at the end of a regulation set, and I think it'll make an interesting year.
Okay, and just on that, finally, is your year already plotted out in terms of when you bring whichever upgrades, and at what point you will have to switch more full-time to 26?
Yes.
And will there be a lot of upgrades, or do you have to start well, really, I suppose, to ensure it's
anyone doing upgrades will already be in that pathway now, is the best I can tell you. We have our year set, but I'll always reiterate, 26 is where our focus is. Has to be.
Well, listen, I wish you well this year, and for 2026, good to speak to you.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Yeah, when is that magic moment this year that teams switch off development to look fully into 2026?
I think it depends on your circumstances. If you're in the championship fight, you've got to keep pushing. You know, I'm a firm believer, and it's tough, right? Because it potentially compromises your following year.
I tell you that.
But bird in hand is worth two in the bush in the championship. History taught us that.
Yep.
Let's look at BMW. You know, they turned off development in 2008 to focus on 2009. Robert Kubica, as the driver, was banging on, saying, no, we should be pushing this year. And they never had another chance to win the championship.
Correct.
That was their chance, and they switched the focus. Conversely, that same year, McLaren and Ferrari kept pushing till the end. Felipe Massa versus Lewis Hamilton in the last race, they were pushing development. But guess what? When you get to the next year, they were nowhere, McLaren and Ferrari. It was Braun GP and Red Bull and Williams and Toyota. So there's an argument for both sides. But I think if we get a situation where, you know, let's say Ferrari versus McLaren versus Red Bull versus Mercedes, they're in the championship fight for this year, they will want to keep pushing on to the end within reason. Whereas someone like Aston, if they're not in that fight, especially with Adrian Newey coming and Andy Cowell setting up a new structure, their focus has got to be on 26.
The natural break surely has to be the Spanish Grand Prix, with the new, more rigid wings that some teams are going to have to bring. After that, if you're not in the fight, then that's 2026 focus.
Yeah, I think that key point is if you're not in the fight.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree. I think but I think the bigger problem is if you are in the fight, then what do you do? Because 26 is such a massive change in terms of engine and chassis range.
So George Russell was talking about this last week, and he was saying about setup of the car and how Mercedes, particularly last year, gained quite a bit by getting the setup right and making sure that if they concentrated on setup at the racetrack, they could still make big gains over the course of a weekend. So even if teams aren't bringing multiple new parts to a race, by delving into their filing cabinets of setup options, then gains can still be made. And is that how you then go and fight that championship battle on the setup and your preparation for the Grand Prix that doesn't include new bits coming?
It's very hard to answer that, Crofty, in a generic way, if I'm honest. You know, you look
answer in an ungeneric way then.
Well, let's look. I'll take Ferrari as an example last year, right? They introduced a new floor in Barcelona, and it introduced a whole degree of bouncing, and you know, and they tried to change the setup of the car to tune it in. They actually, if you think back, I think it was even before, maybe the year before, Carlos Sainz.
Yeah.
No, it was last year. You know, he actually said to the team to pick the car up in terms of setup, so lift the right eye. So even though it takes away some peak performance, it makes it more usable.
Yeah.
I think that's the example you're saying, is to just make the car more user-friendly, and that is set up and you play around with various options. But ultimately, the only way they could fix their competitiveness was bringing new bits, which they did for Austin towards the back end of the year. So, absolutely, you know, setup and the work done on the track can unlock a lot of the performance, but really the majority of the performance is found back in the factory.
and it's a factory that you can understand why they're going to be working on 2026. And I said yesterday when you went here, one team principal in the midfield telling me this year, look, we can devote everything for this season, but realistically we're probably going to gain one place.
Yeah.
So what's the point when we'll then go backwards 4 steps next year?
And if you were Alpine, if you were, you're changing engine supply, you need to get the heat exchange numbers from Mercedes, you need to get the cooling systems, you need to get the integration of the new power units and batteries in. There's an awful lot of work for 2026. If you're sitting there as Flavio Briatore and David Sanchez leading the technical side, you go, well, this year is what it is, we'll just power on, but let's hit the ground running next year.
It's interesting you mentioned David Sanchez as the chief technical officer. This is the first Alpine that's had his influence, his input from the outset.
Yeah.
So big year for David Sanchez.
Yeah, and I think, but that is a really good example, actually, I think, of a team who have optimized or tried to optimize the car with setup.
Yeah.
If you look at last year, they this guy in particular, Gasly, in the second half of last year, some brilliant qualifying and really came on strong towards the last 1/3. But that came from unlocking setup and performance and just getting the car more dialed in. So that was a good example. I think David Sanchez, from everything I'm hearing from people at Enstone, both the race team and factory, they've been really impressed with him. They say he's offered a dose of pragmatism and practical thinking of going, right, these are our capabilities. Let's not, yes, we'd love to be like Red Bull and be able to, or Mercedes, and produce this and the other, but actually this is where our capabilities are. This is what our facilities are. This is what our personnel headcount is. Let's try and do this. Let's be sensible.
No, and David Sanchez comes with a reputation, a good reputation too. Was at Ferrari, went to McLaren, quickly found that there was no room at the inn really for him. So McLaren let him go, and he ends up at Alpine with probably a more responsibility and more scope for his talents.
Well, McLaren were spoiled for choice, weren't they? Because I think they, am I right in thinking they got David Sanchez before they realized how quickly they'd get Rob Marshall?
Yeah, exactly.
And then it was just too many people at the top. So I think it's a win-win for everybody.
No, very good point. We have 16 minutes left of this morning session, and then we're at the halfway point of testing 2025.
There's quite a few changes on that Alpine pit wall, isn't it? You see that Julian Rouse is no longer.
Yes.
I did see him there at least on the wall. So I think there's I saw Rob Cherry, who's was chief mechanic, then got promoted up to technically. Well, you're about to tell me the.
No, I haven't got the official who's who just yet. To be honest, from the teams, it's something I tend to work on when it comes to testing, but I might be able to help you on this one. Julian Rouse. So Rob Cherry's taken race team manager.
Right.
And who else did you want to know about?
But I didn't see Julian on the pit wall there, so I don't think he's there anymore.
I don't know if he is or not.
And he was their sort of sporting director, wasn't he?
Alpine are one of the two teams actually I'm kind of waiting on for their full list of a who's who.
Right.
So come back to me on that one. It's one of the testing things that we have to do so that we know exactly who's who and who's speaking, etc. during the course of the year.
Yeah, a few changes on race engineers, isn't there? I see Jose Manuel Lopez has gone to Sauber.
As Gabriel Bortoletto's
race engineer. He worked briefly with Lando Norris as race engineer, but was performance engineer for Lando for a long time. Worked with Bortoletto on the McLaren Young Driver program last year. So he was supporting Gabriel's Formula 2 effort.
That's exactly what you need if you're Gabriel Bortoletto. Gabriel or Gabriel? What do you say?
I don't know Gabriel, but is he Gabriel?
Oh, I was saying we call him Bibby.
What would the...
Bibby's not a nickname I feel comfortable
with. What would
with
the Brazilians... How would the Brazilians pronounce?
They did say hero. I tell you who.
Text Bruno Senna now.
I tell you who's going to know the answer to this one.
Go on.
Because he would have mentioned him just a couple of times last year. Alex Brundle, come in.
Yeah, the occasional mention of Gabriel Bortoletto.
Gabriel Bortoletto. Thank you very much.
that Alpine pit wall, if they'd kept Julian Rouse on it, might have looked like a who's who of sports car operating personnel. The murky bit of Dave Greenwood's career when he went off to sports car racing after sort of the late teens, where he was running Kimi Räikkönen, of course, at Ferrari, was working with Manor and United Autosports. He had the misfortune of having to engineer me very briefly as well. So I feel sorry for him on that one. It's good to see him back up at the pinnacle. I'm checking in, guys, with what Ted has aptly named the Grand Prix of Carlos Sainz, which halted very briefly, but has continued. Luke Browning was sat outside the garage, so I sort of doorstepped him with a I've not got a timing screen in front of me, what's going on, mate, a few moments ago, and told me that basically they're entirely focused now on race running. Did some performance runs this morning though, and that was a really good feel for where the car was at. So sort of the earlier running for Williams was very much reflective at the time, of course, they ran on the compound, etc., of the pace of the car. This running now very much in terms of gathering mileage and data, as you can see from just how many laps Carlos is pounding into the car.
Thanks, Alex. Cheers. Someone has just
pronounced like left-right by using a bit more of the land on the left.
Yeah.
And widen it, right? So you get two overtaking corners, one after the other.
I don't disagree with that.
There you go, Crofty. Call the Prince. You're a powerful man. You can make it happen.
Yeah, well, I know one DC's got him on speed dial, but it's not me. It's the other one in Formula One that might have a better chance. But I'll tell you what, I'll give Dave Coulthard a call later. Got an idea for a new game show, or however it used to be. Completely disagree with Bring Me Sunshine, says CH. The cars are ridiculously big and heavy. They look like boats. 1995 to 2005 size cars with a roaring V10 engine would solve all those issues. Do you know, I get the feeling, listening to a lot of people as I do, that bringing back V10 solves every issue on the planet, let alone F1. Life was so much better in those days, Karun, wasn't it?
It had its own problems, but I just think the cars are 200 kilos too heavy now.
Back in the days when Michael Schumacher and Ferrari were winning everything and dominating the sport, no one else got a look in. So much better.
I don't think it's so much that, but I think it's just the cars. That's what I'm saying. Nothing was perfect, right? They've had its own challenges, but I do think fundamentally the cars just, you know, they look more vicious, don't they? They're more agile. They look. You watch it on board from. I was watching actually Jenson Button's pole lap from Imola 2004, and Jenson, you know, arguably the smoothest driver in the history of Formula One.
Yeah.
But the car looks lively. It looks like it's on the edge, and I think we kind of missed that with these benign, heavy cars we have today.
I do agree with you on that. I try to agree with you on most things, not everything. But most
that's
things.
Boring. We should disagree.
Well, we should, but I can't disagree with you on that. and as much as that, yeah, it's a lovely work of art, that floor, to be honest. And maybe we should have the Flovis paint all the time, because it actually highlights the floor a lot better. We can see, you know, the more 3D pronouncement of it.
Ooh, the screens are up a bit.
That means they've stopped early.
Yeah.
And I'm not suggesting there's a problem, but something is stopping them coming out. And
well, yeah, they've only done 28 laps as opposed to 70 for George Russell. So
I would have thought that Liam Lawson would have wanted to have been out there for practice start, etc.
Yeah.
And the system testing.
Least number of laps this morning, so I don't know if any of our team on the ground have any information from Red Bull, but yeah, by far the least number of laps this morning, really, so that's not good news for the team.
No, it is not. Oscar Piastri took a while to get out there and get going, but he's now done 42 laps during the course of this morning session.
By the way, I was speaking to some of our friends in Melbourne, Crofty.
Oh, were you?
Saying that the excitement and the buzz around the Australian Grand Prix is off the chart because of this man. You know, he's coming back home. A true Melbourne boy as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
10 minutes on the track.
He's the hometown hero.
Genuinely, you know, 10 minutes on the track, and he's now a Grand Prix winner, coming back on a home soil the race for the first time, and sold out.
Lovely.
Nearly half a million people expected over the weekend.
It's going to be a busy old race, and I tell you what, if Oscar Piastri can win the Australian Grand Prix, it is going to be one hell of a night on Sunday night. By the way, I've got us an invite to a super yacht on Sunday night. Yes, I have.
Where?
Some friends
in
of
Melbourne?
mine. Some friends of mine are bringing a super yacht down to Melbourne.
Wow.
Do you fancy partying like it's Monaco?
I'm in.
Excellent. Alex Brundle, the invitation is extended to you as well. Are you coming to Melbourne?
I was trying to work out how you were going to get away with that throw without inviting me to the super yacht.
Listen, come on.
Give you.
We took a vote, and the ayes have it. You're coming to the super yacht party.
Great, looking forward to it. It's only a flight to the other side of the world, but I'm sure it'll definitely be worth it.
It is.
I give you the information on Red Bull. They stopped a decent amount of time ago. Of course, Lawson in that car for the full day today. Then Max Verstappen taking over as he typically does for the final day of testing. But barriers up means floor off. So unclear exactly what it is they're doing. You may be able to pick up that they're firing engines up behind me, but my understanding is they're done for the morning session and have been for the last sort of 30 to 40 minutes. So yeah, a major change at Red Bull, and then you'll see a bit more of them in the later session.
We will find out, I'm sure, a little later on exactly what's gone wrong there. Thanks ever so much, Alex, because it's not part of the testing program whatsoever.
Yeah, not good news. I mean, people have asked me all winter, Crofty, what's the big storylines?
What's the big storylines, Karim?
This man, absolutely number one, wherever you go. I was in, whether you go to Sainsbury's or the local coffee shop or gas station, everyone wants to know, how will Lewis Hamilton get on Ferrari? Absolutely number one story. Second, can Lando Norris win his first championship? He's got to be the favourite, I think, coming into this year off the back of their last year's form.
He's the bookie's favourite.
He's got to be the favourite, yeah. And this is the first time in his career he goes into the season as the favourite. And I think, can he execute that and win the championship? And the third is, can Red Bull recover their form? Yeah. Max sort of limped over the line last year, having built the advantage early on, but won't get away with it again. So that to me is your top three stories into the season.
If Lando Norris is the bookie's favourite to win, and I don't disagree with that, why is Oscar Piastri quite a long way behind in the odds in the same car?
I think they just look at last year's form, wasn't it? And there were, a number of weekends where Lando had a clear advantage, and some of it came from qualifying. There was a delta of about a 10.5 as the VSC test.
It is part. This is absolutely programmed in. No one's had an off. We're expecting this.
And you know what? That's good for Hamilton to know, because he needs to also, when the VSC gets called, he needs to know immediately which buttons to press to go into the right modes with the engine settings, and the steering wheel is completely different, and it won't yet be intuitive for him to just immediately go into the VSC settings in terms of energy recharge and things like that.
In about 10 seconds time, maybe 15, we should get a red flag as well.
Okay, good. But yeah, I think coming back to the point of Piastri, there was just some weekends where he was slightly behind, wasn't it? So I'm not surprised he's slightly behind on the odds.
If he improves his qualifying in relation to Lando, there's a red flag. And Lando, I think, had the highest average qualifying position of any driver last year, 3.48 on the grid, wherever that is. But if he can be closer to Lando or beat him a bit more occasionally, then I think he has an excellent chance, because I think he is more than good enough.
But the highs were extremely high, wasn't it, Oscar?
Yes.
That race in Baku was outstanding. Yeah. Budapest was a great race as well.
And I love the way he took the lead.
Yeah.
When the team was saying, be careful, no, I'm going to go for it.
Yeah. So, certainly, I thought his highs were extremely high, up there with Lando's. But then you had races like Austin, like Abu Dhabi, where he was, and then he made the mistake in qualifying Mexico. That put him on the back foot.
Abu Dhabi was hardly his fault.
No, but I mean, even up until that shunt of the first lap, he looked a couple deaths behind Lando.
Yeah, he was on the front row.
He was on the front row. No, I agree. But yeah, I think it just, I think Lando just had, across the 24 races, the edge. I mean, the points table tells the story, really.
Well, yeah, and you're right, it does. What I'm trying to say is, if I was having a Crofty pound, I'd probably have it each way on Oscar for better value.
Yeah, better odds.
Yeah. So the cars are coming into the pit lane. Don't go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen, because the climax of this morning session still is yet to arrive. And what will happen now is that all the cars come in because we have a red flag, and then when they're all in the pit lane, the cars will line up they should line up at the pit exit. Those that want to go out should line up at the pit exit. We'll have a green light, then we'll have the cars making their way to the grid for a race start. That's the idea. Lewis looks like he's in debrief mode.
Yeah.
And might not want to come back out again. Or maybe they'll all wait until there's a green light and then they'll come back out again. But the red flag, the session has stopped. There'll be no more laps in terms of timed laps. This is what's going to happen in the afternoon. Liam Lawson is going to hope that they fix whatever they need to fix at Red Bull to get him back out on the track again. Green light is now on. Charles Leclerc takes over at Ferrari, Lando Norris at McLaren, Kimi Antonelli at Mercedes and Lance Stroll at Aston Martin, Jack Doohan at Alpine and Ollie Behrman at Haas, Isaac Hadjar and Gabriel Bortoletto at Racing Bulls and Sauber both come in, and Carlos Sainz will continue on his full day of testing. Now, I can't see the pit lane at the moment, and I can't see if any cars are coming out. One would hope that some cars are going to come out and will queue at the end. I can hear cars. Excellent. So there you go. Esteban Ocon and Oscar Piastri to be joined by the
George Russell.
Mercedes of George Russell. And they've switched their engines off because they're waiting now for the green light. And there goes the green light. And this is once again good testing for the teams. So Oscar's turned his engine off to then go through the process of restarting it again on his own, which of course you can do these days.
Yep. And Russell's doing another little practice start there at the end of the pit lane.
So 3 drivers are coming out for the mini Bahrain Grand Prix.
Good.
Well, the mini Grand Prix race start.
I'm excited.
Well,
do you think he'll have a shunt in the first corner?
I do think there is the possibility of that in a few weeks' time, but not necessarily here today. Oscar Piastri's already had one bit of contact. The last thing that McLaren want is to have another major bit of contact. What do you make of this session while they're making their way around? I think for Lewis Hamilton, confirmation that Ferrari does have pace, and Charles Leclerc was showing that yesterday.
Yeah, I didn't watch yesterday as much as you guys did yesterday, but yesterday it just looked like the front of the car wasn't quite there for Lewis. He wasn't able to get the sharpness he wanted on the front axle, but today it certainly looked like, obviously circuits improved and everyone was going a second quicker, but it felt like he had a car underneath him which he could turn and manipulate on corner entry in a way that Hamilton wants, and I think that's an encouraging sign for him and for well, there's legion of fans out there really want him to succeed at Ferrari.
There are many, as you rightly say. So here we go. Standing start, ladies and gentlemen.
The Red Bull's got to be the other story, hasn't it, Coffee, the morning?
Yeah,
you know,
only 28 laps.
Not looking particularly quick at any point. That's and the car didn't look easy to drive yesterday. We saw Lawson have a little spin. Even when Max was there, the lap time was there, but everything I saw in those little bits, just the Red Bull didn't look particularly easy to drive.
I said, and I promised you a standing start.
Yes.
And you're going to get a standing start, and I'm building you up. Anticipation and tension.
This is where Anthony Davidson pretended to be you.
Exactly. Well, you can pretend to be me, but not now, because
you're here.
I'm here, and also this standing start is going to turn into a suspended start.
Oh,
yes.
Simply lovely. I tell you that.
There goes the green lights. Not the lights going out. which means that they'll do another formation lap. Because what we're doing is we're having an extra formation lap. The start light should have been flashing orange, actually, and there should have been information on the messaging system. All of this needs to be done to make sure that we're all ready to go with all the systems by the time we get to Australia. While we're talking about systems, obviously we had a big floodlight failure yesterday. The floodlights are on at the moment. And as much as it was an inconvenience, because we had to extend by an hour, and people were literally left in the dark, it's a really good job that didn't happen about an hour and a half later on, when it was dark.
Oh, yeah.
Because I thought there was meant to be backup systems in place, so that things like floodlights didn't go out. And I get that that area of Bahrain, you know, was plunged into the darkness because the power cut out across a wide area. I thought we had backups.
Yeah.
And I'm just putting it out there, and I don't know what happened. I really don't. But
we haven't seen an issue yet in official sessions.
No, we haven't.
Singapore, Bahrain, Abu Dhabi, all of Qatar. So many night races we have now, Vegas, of course. But yeah, that was slightly concerning.
That was my worry with this power cut.
Yeah.
That, hang on a minute, the lights just went out,
yeah,
and they didn't come back on again straight away.
There was a lot of talk about that, wasn't it, before the first Singapore Grand Prix, 2008.
Correct.
We were all wondering what would happen if the lights, if there was a power cut. And that was, you know, of course, back then the first and only night race ever in F1. It's thankfully never happened.
So in a way, I'm glad it did happen when it did.
Yeah.
And now the focus should be on, right, okay, if that happens again, where's our backup generator? What's gonna occur?
And listen, you know what? The team at the Bahrain circuit, they're amazing, aren't they?
It's sensational.
And I imagine they would have had a debrief yesterday, and even by today there'll be a backup plan.
But it's one of the best run Grand Prix on the race calendar, and it's and 21 years I think we were Bahrain this year. But it's not just for the Bahrain Grand Prix; it's for every other night race as well. Just to check those systems work.
Well, there's a sort of promoters group who, you know, they meet and discuss things quite often, and I imagine that's the sort of thing which they'll share information about, because it's the sort of thing that can happen to anyone, and you don't want it to happen to anyone.
Esteban Ocon, ladies and gentlemen, is on pole position. He has never had a pole position in his life before. I don't think he's had a front row either. But for the first time this season, we have 5 lights on ahead of the drivers. It's lights out, and away we go. And Ocon literally leaves Oscar Piastri and especially George Russell standing. George, wake up! Season started. There we go. And if George Russell starts like that at Albert Park, well, could be over before it's even started.
But for Ocon, this is the useful exercise to test what the car will be like on cold tyres on the opening lap as well. You know, when you launch off the start, that's why he's pushing on through the first lap here, just to get a feel of what the car will be like. He's not driven a Haas, of course, cold tyres on the opening lap.
Well, he has now, and into turn 8 he goes, and that's where we will leave it, ladies and gentlemen. The ends of the first morning, or the second morning, I should say, the first session of today's qualifying. We are at the testing. We are at the halfway stage of testing 2025. 3 down, 3 to go. And for Lewis Hamilton, fastest time of the day, 1:29.3, ahead of his former teammate George Russell by about 0.4 of a second. That Carlos Sainz time on the C2 tyre, pretty handy really for Williams, 0.7 back. And then Pierre Gasly for Alpine and Fernando Alonso for Aston Martin. Yuki Tsunoda ahead of Oscar Piastri. Liam Lawson ahead of Nico Hülkenberg, and Esteban Ocon with the slowest of the times. Most laps today, George Russell, 71 laps so far in his Mercedes. A satisfying morning for him, and a good morning for his former teammate Lewis Hamilton. Fastest on this first part of day 2 in Bahrain.